You don't crave this at 18. What becomes weirdly attractive after 25? How about a full night's sleep? I do believe it was having kids that did it for me, rather than age. Between nighttime restaurant jobs as a teen, and then military and medical school, I'd been sleep-deprived before, but it was always just a challenge before. Now suddenly, that little jerk has an invisible chain that goes straight into my heart and makes me hate myself if I can't be there for him, resulting in a nasty cycle of staying awake to take care of him and being tired and dissatisfied with the level of attention given to him. A full night's sleep is everything now. Someone who communicates clearly. Mind games lose their charm fast. I lose my absolute mind nowadays when someone doesn't communicate. Like if they say, "I'm sad." "Alright, what's up?" "It's not important." It is. What's happened?" "No, it's fine, whatever." Okay then. This is a carbon copy of conversations I have nowadays with my younger friends, where I just clock out instantly. I find the lack of communication of all kinds really annoying. Like recently at work, I've taken on a new role part-time, and the long-term people don't feel the need to correct me, even though they know I did something wrong and probably talk about it between themselves. How am I supposed to learn if you don't communicate? Being genuinely reliable, keeps their word, handles their money, communicates like an adult, and doesn't turn every minor issue into absolute chaos. Handles their own life is the primary trait that my closest and longest friends have in common. I don't have to worry about them when we're out or traveling together or whatever. They've never asked for money, and if they did, I know it would be for a real reason. A high-quality vacuum cleaner. 5 years ago at 24, lived in a shared flat in the city centre. Zero responsibility, constantly partying, house parties, substances. The flat was horribly equipped with the bare minimum. This went on until 2 or 3 years ago. Amazing experience. Now, cozy flat with the girlfriend outside of the city, working all day, fancy €800 vacuum cleaner, a nice set of pans and pots for a new sideboard. And I want to know what the frick happened in the last years. It feels like yesterday. Where's that crazy disorganized kid I was back then? I understand what you mean though. I bought a new dishwasher and I can't stop talking about it to everyone. Honestly, buying a new piece of equipment to decrease the amount of time my partner and I have to spend doing household maintenance is more exciting to me than all of the substances, partying, or consensual bedroom fun times with supermodels that I could imagine. And yeah, I wonder what happened to my life. You know what's attractive to me? Not going out on a Friday night. How about a large and comfortable bed? Long-term planning. Where do you see yourself in 5 years stops sounding corporate once you're 30. I'm a dad, so, mums. It doesn't make sense until you have a kid that you realize mums who take care of themselves are not only hardworking, but good at time management. Hardworking times smart equals hot. Men in scarves. A somewhat boring but comfortable and financially secure life. Cooking your own food. Herbal tea. Early to bed, early to rise. Someone who can just sit in silence with you and it doesn't feel awkward. At 20, I needed constant stimulation. Every pause in conversation felt like a failure to me. Now, the most attractive thing in the world is someone who can just exist next to you on the couch without either of you reaching for your phone. I love this. I'm recently divorced. Well, it'll be official in a month or two, and I'm slowly putting myself back out there after more than 20 years. My ex hated just sitting in silence with me, and I don't mean that negatively towards her. We're all who we are, and that's okay. She had to always be talking, on her phone, whatever. I'm currently kinda sorta seeing someone, and she loves sitting with me and watching movies, often in silence. I'm not the chattiest person, so I sort of crave that quiet intimacy. Death's sweet release. Oh yeah. I feel like the older I get, the more attractive calmness and kindness gets. When I was younger, drama, high-energy people were more fun to me. I grew up with messy aunts who all drove my grandmother crazy. By the time I got to high school, drama wasn't entertaining or cool, but people just judged you for not partaking. People who are fed up with the grind and want to just get through the day in peace. I find younger people unhealthily thrive on chaos and constantly want to monetize everything. I just want to be comfortable and not have to check my balance when I buy a coffee. I want to be dependable and respected. I wanted these things when I was younger too, but I didn't realize it back then. Also, men with grey hair are super hot. My fiancé is complaining about his greys, but they look so shiny in his dark brown hair. And to be fair, a huge reason why so many young people are focused on money is because life has become too expensive for people just entering the job market. The idea of owning a house has become a fantasy. I think everyone wants to be able to comfortably buy things and not worry about money, but that's a luxury, to put it lightly. Totally agree. There's balance to everything. Monetizing every breath you take isn't great for your mental health, and it stunts you when it comes to developing genuine relationships, in my humble opinion. But you are right, life is expensive as F, and everyone wants stability. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, stability won't just be a dream that people chase. A quiet, relaxing weekend. How about a snowblower? I'm 32 and I still refuse to buy one because as soon as I do, it'll never snow again. But damn, I want one more every winter. Well, you're not wrong. I bought one a few years ago after a really harsh winter, and the following 2 years we never got more than a light dusting of snow. The grey hair that starts coming in on the sides. It looks great on some men with dark hair. My boyfriend has that, and I never thought of it before as attractive. Reed Richards and Stephen Strange. Being over 25, unless you're Leonardo DiCaprio. Really strong and thick black bin bags. Much lower risk of splitting upon extraction. Emotional stability. Drama stops being exciting real fast. I'd say I've experienced a disturbing amount of catty drama amongst 40 to 50-year-olds that are identical to a Degrassi episode. I was really hoping high school would end after I became an adult, but for some people, I guess not. A gig with insurance and benefits. I'll sell my soul for that. A healthy body. Listen, I'm 31, I've neglected my body from 20 to 29. Start hitting the gym and eating right, reduced alcohol, worked on my sleep. I started doing all of that at 29 and I feel way better. I feel better than I did at 22. An air fryer. Men in their early 30s, as in non-celebrity crush men in their 30s. Cooking for yourself. A steady job and financial responsibility. Potential doesn't pay rent, guys. Knowing when to say no to plans because you need a rotting day on the couch is top-tier self-care, and it is infectious. For me, it was thicker women. I always thought I'd only be into thin chicks. Now I love having my hands full. My fiancé gained a bit of weight after we had our son, and I find her hotter than she's ever been. I cannot get enough of her. Please don't forget to tell her that. Some women get insecure about it, especially after having a baby. Someone say bald guys, someone say bald guys, please, someone say bald guys. Having no plans for the weekend. Peace and quiet hits different once you're tired all the time. No plans used to mean, wow, you're missing out. It now means my couch and I have a special appointment. Once 25, peacefulness and quiet isn't tedious, it's a luxury. To wake up without an alarm, no drama, no group chat to organize 12 people who can't agree on where to eat, just quietness and maybe a morning cup of coffee. I think the actual upgrading you need to do is preserving your energy, because it's a finite resource. Turns out what other people call boring, I call well-rested. I'd argue that I kind of had a second wind for partying in my late 20s and early 30s, and we probably all drop out of that habit at different points in life. But yeah, generally your point is well received. I am firmly in the couch potato period of my life, with tiny flavoursome bursts of excitement and nights out once in a blue moon. I'm more like a potatoey frittata. Manual processes. Taking 15 minutes to shave with a safety or straight razor, 15 minutes to grind your coffee beans and brew pour on a V60, take 30 minutes to write a journal entry with pen and paper to decompress. Also, enjoying a drink. We're not talking slamming cheap stuff to get slammed ASAP. Drink a nice pour of whiskey or a glass of wine over an hour and then just call it good for the night. Cheese! I always knew a woman could be enticed with cheese. What type works best? New socks. The simple joy of shopping and going places by yourself for your own enjoyment in peace at your own pace versus with other people. Medical benefits. It's long walks for me. The quality of the chair you sit on. How about naps, huh? Cheaper car insurance. Midday naps. Being 35.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Having stable finances. Look, I'm not saying you have to be rich, but at the very least, someone who's living within their means and not piling up debt recklessly shows that they can be responsible. They can take care of themselves, and after 25, that's attractive on multiple levels. Emotional maturity. When you're younger, it sounds boring, but once you've dealt with enough chaos, someone who communicates clearly, stays calm, and doesn't play games becomes ridiculously attractive. Brussels sprouts. Having a goal. I don't care if it's an easy goal to keep accomplishing or something you'll be passionately chasing for a decade. Having a true, passionate purpose. Just existing to make plans to party and taking life week by week gets real old. Watching someone work towards their wants and conversing with someone who's actually deeply passionate about what they're doing is a higher tier of appreciation. For me, it was my own face and body. One day I just woke up and said, "Damn, I look good," and I stopped wearing makeup. Wine. On the flip side of that, waking up not hungover. Financial responsibility. Financial security like home ownership, health insurance, and pensions. Look, it's not the hottest, but you sure feel like it when you don't have that. Relationship. What a nice guy. He lives with and takes care of his mother after his dad passed. Honestly, stability. In your early 20s, it sounds boring. Predictable job, same routine, saving money, sleeping on time. You want chaos, late nights, random trips. We'll figure it out. But after 25, when life actually starts throwing real stuff at you, a stable paycheck, someone who shows up on time, a calm mind, even a fixed sleep schedule starts looking very attractive. Like, wow, you mean I don't have to be stressed all the time? Didn't think I'd say this, but peace over excitement any day now. Money. Bed sheets or anything that can be used in the kitchen. Naps. Peace. Coming back home after a long workday, only to see your wife whisper lightly in your ear, "I did the laundry." An air fryer and a full night of sleep, all 8 hours of it. When they can be independent without you all of the time. Oh, so hot. Kitchenware. Introverted or homebody women. In my early 20s, that would have annoyed me, but those days are behind me. Full stack vibe coding to be an end-to-end business creator, oh yeah. A job that provides health insurance. A 9 p.m. bedtime and somebody who texts, "I made a reservation." As a man, let me say, a bigger variety of women. I promise guys, teenage you had a very limited worldview. Those Insta-hotties might look good in curated and edited pics, but having something real and in hand is so much more valuable. Socks. Like really good, nice, comfortable socks. A good job. Not feeling like you're missing something out by staying at home. Just being home is such a pleasure now that I'm older. Lower car insurance rates. Finding people who have strong, differing opinions and can still maintain civility. The financial ability to stab. Wait, no, I mean financial stability. I never cared if the girl I was dating had a real job until I was about 25. Now I couldn't imagine dating a hippie chick again. Big jugs. After 25 beers, how about yo mama? Sitting in silence and doing your own thing. It can feel like two parallel lines going together and having their own existence. Homemade food. A pillow and blanket. I used to like girls that weren't into me. Now I like girls that are into me. Men. Vacuum cleaners? When you're younger, chaos can feel exciting. After 25, someone who communicates clearly, handles conflict calmly, and actually knows what they want, that becomes incredibly attractive. Peace beats drama every time. In someone else, wanting to settle down. In general, having time to rest, maybe? Being weird. I pretty much went from the weird gay kid that always gets excluded to the chill nice guy in a decade. Feels pretty good, and it was a nice boost in confidence. People that take their fitness and food consumption seriously and have good sleep hygiene. Employment benefits. A strict, boring sleep schedule. Going to bed at 10:30 p.m. on a Friday used to feel like a punishment when I was younger. Now, slipping into fresh sheets before 10 p.m. is the ultimate luxury. Being single. Wisdom in conversations. The emotional ability to emotional stability. The couch. Listen, guys, I'm a bit over 25 and a lot of the rest of you sound boring as F. Good quality socks and underwear. Peace. Letting go of playing the role that society wants you to play. Attractiveness. Driving a minivan. Oh yeah, daddy. Fiscal responsibility. Credit scores. Financial responsibility? Is that the same as fiscal? I don't know. Not really giving an F about anyone else's opinions. Proper communication. We're talking Morse code, none of the semaphore bullcrap. I mean, to me, everyone's just listing things that are attractive at all ages. Well, you're not really wrong, as tastes are basically flexible from person to person, but I would say that the majority of serious answers here could be said to have increasing value to most of us later in our lives. I know that a lot of them have been true for me. Serotonin. After 25, you start to appreciate silence more than the noise of streets, work, and people. Boring life. Just simple stuff here and there. Staying home. Also, having a smaller circle of friends. Retirement. Men who fold laundry and do dishes. A pension fund. Sobriety. I suspect that the person who asked this must be Leonardo DiCaprio expanding his horizons. 8 whole hours of sleep. How about just a nap? Naps are good. Nothing. This answer was provided by user Leonardo DiCaprio. Reliable friends over fun friends. As life gets busier, friendships aren't baked into our activities like they are in school, and many of us face our first crises. Truly caring and reliable people are treasures during this time. The fun but flaky friendships don't always sustain well when things aren't fun. Not that reliable people can't be fun too, I just mean it gets more functional when we change what we're looking for, and become that kind of friend to others too. A nap. Grey hair and sitting in silence together. I'll only say this once, fight me if you must. Know that I will win. A good vacuum cleaner. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. People who can emotionally regulate themselves well, and people who enthusiastically love to communicate. Tell me how your workday was crap and you used self-soothe skills to get through it. But now you're exhausted, so you're communicating your needs and asking for support while promising to pick up the slack in another area and following through because we're partners and we help each other. Do that and I will climb you like a tree. Going to bed early. Having only one pot to clean. Reddit. Sleep. After working 3 different shifts at 3 different areas and workplaces, one thing that you'd trade all of those earnings for will be more sleep. Leaving more people on scene, and it's not about leaving every person on scene, rather it's about how it's okay to not just want to interact when you owe them nothing. I used to respond and entertain everyone who came to me back then. I have 0 friends that I keep in contact with now, and I'm content with my small family. Being quiet. I'm still a pretty anxious person and I might flail around in chit-chat, but ultimately I really just want some peace in my exchanges. Not trying to convince, argue, judge, or one-up. Debates have their time and place, sure, but I prefer to let people be. Honestly, a solid sleep schedule and taking care of your health. Stretching literally becomes the best part of the day. Older women. A good credit score. Cuidarte el fin de en casa. Maturity. Sleep. A quiet night in with no plans. Before 25, you feel like you're missing out on life when you're not out at a party or event. After 25, realizing you have a clean house, fresh sheets, and nowhere you need to be is the ultimate luxury.
Look, you're all wrong. The objectively correct answer is a pressure washer for cars. I did a lot of research into the best one, and when I finally got to use it, pure bliss. I don't need anything else anymore.
What secret are you hiding from everyone but okay to share with us here? That I'm leaving my job in a few weeks. I keep having people try and schedule things with me months in advance where I'm sort of forced to smile and agree. It's always weird to be in that space of too early to give notice. I was abused by a neighbor in my adolescence. I didn't tell anybody because I was a boy and embarrassed by it all. The thought of my dad or brothers finding out was too much. Just packed it away. He died when I was away at college. Good riddance. I concur. I found out recently that I have an extra $10,000 in student debt. It's a pretty big secret. I failed high school twice and I'm faking going to college, but instead taking high school final exams. I feel sad and disappointed looking at my parents' faces, but I can't do anything. Instead, just give my best in the exams. My exams are from 2nd of July. Please wish me luck. I really need it. I mean, this was like 5 years ago, so I hope you passed it by now, bud. I am a pathological liar. I don't even mean to do it, but I just do at this point, and it scares me a bit. I am fixing it, though. That's a goddamn lie, and you know it! The family computer didn't break because of downloading music. It was me and my adolescent internet browsing. Oh boy, I've been there, buddy. It seems stupid, but after 3 kids and divorce, I can't figure out my frickin' life, neither where I'm going. I carry around regrets and mom guilt, and I'm completely lost. My wife cheated on me, and we're going through the start of the divorce process. My family doesn't even know. I'm in agony every day. I had some surgery that went very, very wrong, and I am struggling to keep motivated to keep going. I'm a grown man and I love Winnie the Pooh. I don't own any memorabilia or anything, but I watch YouTube videos, and if I see it on TV, I have to watch it. Hey, buddy, I love Winnie the Pooh too. I don't think there's a single individual on this planet that doesn't, on some level, love Winnie the Pooh, except for maybe the leader of the CCP. I like having crushes, but not actually doing anything about them. Partially because I enjoy the blissful feeling of liking someone, and partially because that gets ruined whenever I actually do anything about it. I regret deeply not bonding more with my college class. I just now realized that I was liked by them and I kinda pushed them away all these years. I want to tell my boyfriend I love him, but I think he needs to get help for his mental health issues before this relationship moves forward. Honey, according to women, that's just about every man in the world. But you do you. I'm afraid of my neighbor. I don't know why, but he just creeps me out. He's always staring at me, occasionally making comments on my body. Oh, is that you? I thought for sure someone sent a model over. You have a great body for a teenager. Those shorts look awfully short on you. I'm 14. He and my dad are friends and is always over at my house. When he comes over, I'll always hide in my room. My mom doesn't like him either because of the time he came during my baby sister's sleepover and just sat in silence at the fire pit while my dad went inside to get drinks. I'm afraid to say anything to my dad because I know he isn't able to get out with his friends a lot, and he really likes my neighbor, but I can't shake the feeling that something is just off with him. A few of these are being quite relatable, and we're only 3 minutes in. I also dislike my neighbor, and not because he makes inappropriate comments about my body, but that would certainly be a problem. I'm really big on honesty because of growing up with a narcissistic parent. However, I never tell people that I'm bipolar. I'm a PTA mom in the suburbs. The judgment and stigma that would come along with that knowledge would likely affect my entire family. I am physically falling apart. My health is a chain of unfortunate events. I quit smoking, I barely drink, I stay physically fit enough to remain in the military, yet I fight every day just to pretend I am okay. I'm tired of being in physical pain with every little thing, but I will continue the charade until something finally gives permanently. It actually scares me. I hate that I'm 45 years old and feel as if I'm 80. The secret is that everyone I know thinks I'm so strong. I've overcome so much. I'm a fighter. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is I live in daily pain and it's starting to wear on me physically and emotionally. Finally, I just started seeing a therapist. I was afraid to, but I can't handle the anxiety by myself anymore. It's civilian. I simply have lost faith in the military medical system. Not sure how I feel about it yet, but it's not hurting me so far. Glad to hear you're starting to get help. My maternal grandfather was a hitman who killed several politicians and activists in his country during a very corrupt time. He moved to the US and remarried. My paternal grandfather was a corrupt politician who hired hitmen on his political opponents and embezzled right before stepping down from office and avoiding indictment. Not sure if they ever met because this is all I know and found this all out by chance. I don't even think my own parents know this much. That is a pretty insane goddamn coincidence. Like, wow. Recorded my fiancé yesterday. I got him to talk about his D&D character and I didn't want to forget anything because I'm going to commission an art piece of it for his birthday. It's killing me to keep it a secret because I tell him everything. I hope he likes it. Whoever this lucky man might be, she's a keeper, my friend. When I was reading that, I was expecting it to go in a different direction. Thank goodness, that was wholesome. I sometimes hope my grandma passes away soon. She has severe dementia and Alzheimer's, and my mom is the only person my grandma will allow to help her, which means she's basically on call 24/7. She's aggressive, a runner, and basically has the mind of a toddler. I feel like a butthole for thinking it, but we've been mourning losing who she used to be. Losing her physically would mean she could be at peace, and my mom could finally take a break. You know, as someone whose grandmother also suffered from memory loss and mental issues towards the end of her life, I understand to a degree. I never got to that point, but it is sad to lose someone on an emotional level in your life that to the point where they don't even remember you. It's sad. It's hard. About 15 years ago, I slept with my high school teacher. Literally never spoke about it out loud to anyone, ever. This is actually the first time I wrote it down even. Guess 15 years is long enough for it to feel like it just doesn't matter anymore. I lost contact with all of my friends months ago. I still try to be happy and smile through everything. I'm a pretty positive person. I think there will come better times, but especially now in summertime when I see everyone on social media are going out swimming or having cookouts, it's kind of sad to be at home all the time or go for a walk by yourself all the time. Why is it so hard to find new friends? Damn. One is the loneliest number you can ever do. Whenever I think about that song, I think of Recess the movie. Anyway, I'm sorry you're feeling very lonely, dude. One of my best friend's dad cheated on their wife with a secretary or something and she got pregnant. They kept her baby. That was around the time my friend was born. Fast forward 19 years later on, I meet this guy at work who looks a lot like my friend. When he figures out that I know him, he tells me his story. My friend to this day doesn't know he has a half-brother living in the same city as him, and I can't tell him because the half-brother promised me not to because his dad won't allow it. Pretty screwed up. The father of both told the half-brother to not tell his brother about his existence or he will stop supporting his college education, among other things. Why, you may ask? Because his wife doesn't know about him, and that will definitely destroy their marriage and family, which is selfish as all hell. I cannot say anything either because if I do, I will be the architect of a marriage and family falling apart, or worse, for something which is really not any of my business and didn't ask to be a part of. The thing is that the half-brother wants to be the one to go directly to his brother and tell him everything when he's financially capable of supporting himself, and that's something I have to respect. I've known my friend since childhood, and it hurts me not to tell him, but I've been trying to find a way to let him know without being the architect of anything. The 23andMe thing is actually a good idea, and I've taken it into consideration. I appreciate the idea, so I might see if I can come up with something. Buddy, that right there sounds like a whole lot of none ya. None ya what? None ya business. And I'm sure that Secret Love Child Man has a plan, a process, he will get it done in due time, but don't push it.
I'm a digital artist who made a bunch of paid commissions already. However, it's all cheated. I used a software for the anatomy and just trace over it. I become that good in line art and coloring, where the obvious tracer red flags don't work anymore. I've never wanted this to come that far, but as soon as I made my first trace drawing, I got sucked into an abyss that is impossible to leave. All my friends know me as the artist. There are many I wouldn't ever have been able to talk to without my art, but most importantly, my parents are proud of my work and call me talented. For the fact that I live in constant fear that my parents are disappointed in me, hearing them compliment my drawings is everything to me. But it hurts so much. Seeing them love a work I've no right to present, especially when I try to fit in and complain about tracers while I'm just one of them. This is going on for 3 years by now. Bloody hell, don't trace. Either you get caught or you'll suffer because you weren't brought to your senses.
Not only do I free the raccoons the homeowners association is trying to catch, but I feed them beef tips while I eat frozen dinners. Not sorry. I once saw one of those little freaks rip off a car antenna ornament and run away with glee, and that was hilarious, and now we are homies for life. Well, I can already tell you're an individual that likes to fly pretty close to the sun. Do not play this game, my friend. I have been down this road. You will be tried for treason when they find out your identity. Your family won't be safe. Your loved ones, your friends, they're all dead if they find out you freed those raccoons. Why, oh why would you even risk incurring the wrath of the Homeowners Association of all things? Even though I have a master's degree, I don't know if I'll ever figure out what I want to do with my life. Nothing really pulls me. Well, you know, that sucks, but things could be way worse. You could be a guy without a master's degree and still not have a pull in life whatsoever. That's certainly not the worst situation to be in, and you know, some people don't have a pull in life and also don't have a master's degree. You're in a good situation. You have a qualification. You can do that until you find your passion. Just keep on broadening your horizons, and eventually you'll find it. I hope you do. I touch myself in the bathroom at work sometimes. I would literally never tell that to a soul. HR is long overdue to have a word with you. I wish a couple of my exes would talk to me again, even just as friends. I miss them a lot. I emotionally abuse myself hardcore. It's to the point now where my life seems to be falling apart because of it. I don't know how to stop either. I can get all the positive things said, but I don't believe it. I doubt every bit of it, telling myself they don't see all the bad because I hide it. The worst part is knowing all this and not believing myself. My dog was put down today in my arms. I don't want my friends to know. I don't want their I'm sorries and condolences. I don't know what I want, but not that. No hugs. I want to mourn in my own way. Other than my family, I want to climb this mountain myself. I want to be able to use the word mate so badly. I can't stand it, but I don't want to seem crazy. I'm an American. I've got a fair few American friends, and I've heard one or two of them say mate in, like, you know, the friendly way, obviously, and yeah, there's something weird about it. Maybe it's their specific accents, but it does weirdly sound wrong. I flushed a Capri Sun juice box into the toilet and blamed it on my little sister. I was 8 at the time, and because of me, we had to open the pipes to remove it. Still haven't told anyone. Everyone thinks my chicken is amazing, but I just buy Popeyes and Churches and mix them together on a plate. Man literally went, but what if I were to purchase fast food and disguise it as my own cooking? Delightfully devilish, Seymour. I was a waiter at a local restaurant. The other night, a man paid his check for the family and tipped me on $158 by giving me $180 in total, in 20s. Now, he had been there for hours and been really annoying, so I had been happy to get anything from him. While I'm counting out the money, the man approached me, says he gave me too much and takes a $20 bill back, giving me a $2 tip. I bit my tongue and walked away. Fast forward, I go to sweep under his table to see his driver's license fell out onto the ground. I casually swept it up and threw it away because screw that guy. He can go waste time at the DMV just like I wasted time serving him. You know what? I might not agree with it, but good for you. You got your pound of flesh. My girlfriend and I have been dating for 4 years now, and for 4 years we've been dating, I have always found her mother to be very, very attractive. I often fantasize about her. I know I'm weird, can't help it. I recently bought 2 baby goats. My wife doesn't know. I picked them up on Saturday. This is gonna go one of 2 ways, fingers crossed. I wish you and your goats good luck, sir. I have a corn snake in my no-pet apartment, and 2 of my roommates don't know. Shh. There's a bit of backstory here. I'm adopted and I have a great relationship with my biological family. I was born in Montana and I live in the southern Midwest. I only met my great-grandmother once when she passed. I was asked to come up to Montana because she left me something in her will and testimony. I had to read the will and testimony with my biological father. She left me a 150-acre ranch with a house and a bunker, and it's paid off. I have never told my adoptive family that I own the land and that all of my money goes to preparing all the bunker for super big emergency situations. Inherits land becomes a doomsday prepper. You know what? It's not a bad use for it. I attempted self-deletion, and then when I lived, barely, I made it my life's work to create a non-profit for stressed-out students in school. Truthfully, it's just my way of fighting the self-deletion thoughts I have. It kills me how disinterested my family and friends are in supporting me. But I continue forward since I do help kids and am proud of what I do. Maybe one day I can afford healthcare and I can fix my own head. It feels so selfish to volunteer and help in the community when I can't afford food and have to beg for help from my parents. I work for the school district and no work in the summer. I just wish there was a way for me to meet others like me. There has to be others out there who lived and are like, now what? Kids love my programs, but unfortunately, I don't have a head for business. It's definitely commendable that you're trying to help others in such a way, but I also think it's important to learn to live within your means and help yourself before you try to help others, because, well, when you're out of luck and out of funds or whatever, then who's going to help the people that you've been supporting? I really want to call CPS on my niece-in-law. Her 4-year-old daughter is still in diapers, has a vocabulary of under 40 words, and rotted her front teeth down to the gum line, likely because she still drinks from a bottle. This poor child's parents don't give half a damn about her, and it kills me every time I visit. The only reason I don't is because their house belongs to my mother-in-law, and between it being overcrowded, 7 humans, and far too many cats, 9? Someone would have to intervene in response to the CPS call. I just want somebody to hold, bro. Me too, buddy. Me too. I have DID, dissociative identity disorder, and I haven't told anyone for 4+ years. I was going to tell my family last year, but then Split came out and they saw it almost immediately. So if that's not an awkward time to break it to your parents and siblings that you've got the same mental disorder as a fictional murderer in a movie, by the way, Split was relatively inaccurate on certain DID things, just for y'all's education, that they just happened to watch, there's no way I would be believed. I'm going to be killing off my character in D&D and have their body become possessed by a ghost and have that be my new character, but have them pretend to be the original person. It's complicated, but fun as hell for me personally. One day, I walked out to my backyard and saw my dad standing by our compost pile with a couple buckets of dirt and the hose. He was taking a handful of dirt and spraying through them with the hose. I asked him what he was up to. At first, he wouldn't tell me and tried to brush me off. I persisted, and eventually, he told me that early in my mother and his marriage, he had lost his wedding ring when doing work along the side of the house. At the time, he went out and bought an identical ring to the original, and my mom was none the wiser. Apparently, for the last 15 years, when spring comes around and he does any cleaning on that side of the house, he searches through the dirt. My mom still doesn't know he lost the original ring. Personally, I actually think that is so sweet. I burned down my neighbor's house and my family paid them, the neighbors, over $500,000 under the table so that I wouldn't get in trouble, and so that they could buy a new house, a new car, and new furniture, and all that. This was back when I was 7 years old, and I regret it all now. No one else knows this except for my family, my neighbors, and myself. My bathroom is 3 flights down, and let me tell you that sometimes I just don't make it before an accident happens, so I bought a Shiwi and now pee in a bottle if I need to in the middle of the night. The relief is awesome. I'm basically always anxious and furious at the office about how little work I have at my job. I have 10 years experience doing this, so crap doesn't take me very long, even when I spend extra time on something, so it looks like I have more to do than I actually have. It's 100% the company's fault. During the interview, I even said that the position doesn't seem like it'll have a lot of work and asked what the day-to-day is like. They laughed and said I definitely have enough work, but I don't. The most annoying part, aside from trying to look busy all day, is a couple people who are higher than me give me crap about my office hours, despite them screwing around all day, never being at their desk, taking more vacation and sick days than we have allotted, and constantly working from home despite the office weirdly not being too down with that officially. I come in about 20 minutes late every day and leave about 20 minutes early. I eat lunch at my desk like a sad employee because I always want to be around in case someone decides they have something for me to do. I'm at my desk more than these couple of people that give me crap for it. They sometimes say they were looking for me, but I wasn't at my desk. And when I excitedly ask what they wanted and if they had work for me, they say no, and then disappear for the next couple hours. They're just giving me crap. I do all the work assigned to me and even do stuff on my own that I feel needs to be done. There is a backlog of work I've completed that no one has implemented. I can't implement it. Some of it is almost a year old. I always ask if people have crap for me to do, and only a couple people ever do. I am constantly worried that I'm going to get fired, despite the company actually needing me and my work. But due to other crappy employees, office politics, and bureaucracy, I have about an hour of work a day, if that. It's also pretty difficult to get jobs at my level in my field, so every day I just have to be anxious and angry, assuming I'm going to get canned before I find a new job. It's definitely infuriating when you're in a work environment that just isn't functioning correctly, especially when you are not the issue at hand. It's just a general thing and other people screwing you over. I was visiting some family on a farm and they have these geese that are super aggressive and always trying to flex on everybody, and one of them came at me a few weeks ago and all I did was clap back and touch one feather just to show it I was serious, and then it turned around and ran into my parked car and just looked super upset and confused. It wasn't hurt and it literally just walked into a car, but it looked so sad that moment and I feel so guilty. I took the cookie from the cookie jar. I am secretly dating my ex-girlfriend's best friend. Neither of us have told anyone because we know how much word tends to get around and she doesn't want to lose her friend. What are people's feelings on that? Is it bad to date your friend's ex wholesale, just outright, or is there a mature and, good way to go about it? Like, if the two or everyone can be mature about the whole thing, I'm curious. I never learned how to put my bra on behind my back like a normal person. I hook it up and put it on like a shirt. There is still hope for you. You can just get a bra that you don't need to hook. What are your unforgettably creepy moments? I saw the aftermath of what happens when a 350-pound man jumps out of a 20-story window. It does not look like what they show on TV. When I was 12 years old, my friends and I were riding our bikes through some woods down an old dirt road that wasn't much used anymore. I decided it would be cool for me to go off-road and rode off into the forest. I got about 50 feet before I got disorientated and started going towards the creek, which was in a dell down a steep hill. From there, something else I didn't know, so I crashed down the hill and hit this huge boulder collection before coming to a rest. Off toward the road, I could hear my friends calling to me, so I knew which way to go. I started over towards their voices and saw a super old rusted out car. Now, I was a huge license plate collector back then, and finding rusted out cars in the woods was not that odd of an occurrence, so I went to see if I could harvest the license plate. When I got there, I saw there were bones in the front seat and a pile of rags. It was full-on Raiders of the Lost Ark with a skeleton on a pike kind of thing. I screamed like a little girl and got the hell out of there. I told my parents later, who called the police, and after some investigation determined that the man had disappeared during a blizzard in the late 50s and was never heard from again. I met his widow and children and won an award from the town. I'll never forget that feeling. Creepy as hell. This occurred in 1981. He had been missing for 20 plus years at that point, and I am now a 43-year-old man. I have no long-term effects from this event. I remember it. I remember being scared at the time and then completely puzzled as to why finding something by accident and then telling my parents about it was such a big deal. I went in the basement and looked in the box where I thought that certificate might have been, but it wasn't there. My mom might have had it. I'll ask my sister if she's seen it. No, I didn't get the license plate. My friends and I went back after all the dust had died down and they had pulled the car out. I've not been back there in decades. The amount of time the body was there is kind of crazy to me, but it's also kind of nice, only kind of nice, that the family must have gotten at least a little bit of closure from knowing exactly what happened to him. More traumatic than creepy, but saw the immediate aftermath of an adolescent run over by the school bus next to the one I was on. It was a cold morning and there was steam coming off the body. I remember that and the spilled lunchbox. This is why they have sweeper bars on the front of the buses now, to make sure adolescents walk far enough in front of the bus that the driver can see them. I have a young daughter now, and these are the things that keep me up at night. Saw a dead guy pulled out of a creek on my parents' property when I was 16. He flipped his truck while high and drunk and trespassing. He decided to leave when the cops were called on him. He didn't make the turn onto the bridge and it flipped his truck into the creek. He broke his neck upon impact. A bunch of guys tried to get him out, but the mud was suctioning him down. When the EMTs and police showed up, they got him out and he was bloated and white by that time. They put him on the rescue sled to pull him up the bank. His bloated white head was bobbing because of his broken neck. That image is burned into my brain. I used to live in a funeral home, literally in a funeral home. My parents owned it, but we didn't have enough income to really support a home for ourselves. So we took part of the building and kind of converted it into an apartment. Due to some pretty bad planning on my parents' part, we had the living room like right next to the area where we kept the bodies, which was right next to the embalming room. Basically, every day I'd see a random naked dead guy or two sitting on a table right outside where I was playing. Sometimes my dad would be working in the embalming room, you know what I mean by working, and since there were pretty big windows on the door, God knows why, I would get to see almost everything, from a guy getting stabbed and having his blood let out, to the egregious stitching that that would have to be done to guys coming from the morgue. But as time goes on, you just get used to it, and all of it isn't really that scary. You don't really know any of the people that you see dead, so there's no real psychological impact on you. The only scary thing is when friends of the family get sent to the funeral home. That could put a man in the mental clinic. Growing up in the funeral home, now boys, stop playing with the embalming fluid. When I was learning to drive, my father would accompany me. There was a football game in town that the rest of my family was at, but I was not going for some reason. On my way home and into my neighborhood, a fairly large neighborhood, we went past a van, a plain white van that was off, until it turned on and followed us all the way to the road that my house is on. It went to the cul-de-sac. My father took the truck to the game, leaving no vehicles in the parking area and myself alone at home. That white van decided to pull into my driveway, so I ran into my father's closet and grabbed a shooty bang bang and walked out in my front porch with it drawn at the van. That van went into reverse and backed out of my driveway faster than it came in. It was a very strange experience, and I sat on my porch for a good 30 minutes before going back inside for the night. My neighbor didn't pick up his kids from school one day, so I had to break into his house. I found him on the basement floor with no clothes on. I could tell he was still alive, but obviously there was brain damage as he couldn't form words or even move. I later found out he had a brain aneurysm and he had no clothes on because it happened while he was having some alone time. Man can't even be alone and naked in his house without being worried about a brain aneurysm. God damn. Look, I won't lie, I can be a bit of a hypochondriac. It's like, you feel that pain in your chest over there, like, oh God, is it over? I was working in an ice cream shop when I was in high school, and at night, in the winter, it would only be me and another manager. It was in a pretty nice area, and behind the store, there was a giant park that got really creepy at night. That night, the manager was a girl, like myself, not too much older than me, and when we are closing, we have to do trash. We were both pretty small, but we could easily do it by ourselves. I decided to take the trash out that night because she was counting money. So I get all the bags out, and I walk outside, and in the parking lot next to the trash, there is a man standing there. He was wearing sweats, and there was just this look of hatred on his face that I've never seen in anybody before. I ran back in, locked the doors to be safe, and did some dishes thinking that I could do the trash later. I walked into the main room of the store where there are all the windows, and he was standing there in the window just looking in, and I will never forget the smile that came on his face when he saw me again. It was the worst mix of evil and complete joy. I can't even describe how his eyes were. They were filled with hate. A hate that I've never seen on anybody before. I ran into the back room with my manager, and we hid there for what felt like 2 hours until the police came. By then, he was gone, of course. However, he was arrested a few weeks later for the brutal assault and killing of a girl my stature and hair color. Obviously, I don't know anything about this, and I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm sorry for a lot of the people that go through some of the stuff that they do on this, but that sounds absolutely terrifying. I was just saying the other day how crazy and just downright petty some of the motives that people have for doing certain heinous and brutal things to other people are. I was flying to India and we had just stopped in Germany. I was 14 and sitting next to this old guy who I thought was asleep the whole time. I shake him because we landed, because he was kind of laying on me. No response. I was an unaccompanied minor, so when the stewardess came to get me, she looked at him, checked his pulse, and then everyone was ordered to stay where they were, including me. The paramedics came and declared him dead. I never knew for how long. I had never seen a dead guy up close before and was surprised at the time. I thought he would smell of something rotten when he died or would make a noise or something beforehand. To this day, I always think if I had noticed earlier, I could have helped him. I also had a dead guy lay on my shoulder for 8 hours and I fell asleep during that flight as well, so there was a good chance I used his head as a pillow while I slept. Creepy, but that's life. Once when I was like 10 years old, my dad was unemployed and we were struggling for a few months financially. And some kid in school called me a broke bum over something I don't even remember. And he told me to buy some decent clothes and that I looked like a hobo. It wasn't that bad, he was just saying stuff to hurt me. That really struck a nerve, so after school I walked up to him while he was sitting on his bike, and I punched him so hard on the one side of his head that blood started coming out of his nose and his left eye turned red. He screamed, "Oh my God, I can't see!" I just felt sick to my stomach and felt like a monster. I just wanted to disappear that moment. But he was fine after a few minutes. It's good that you felt bad. Is it an excuse? No, but you felt bad, and that's a good thing because it means that you have empathy. But you know what? On the other hand, that kid probably never grew up to talk so much unnecessary smack ever again. I say unnecessary. You said yourself, you don't know why you were arguing. You might have been the one at fault. You, sir, are an unreliable narrator. But that's okay, I am too. You seen these comments out here? They're killing me. When I was young, one of my friends was killed just outside of school in the woods. A week or so later, my friends and I were walking through them, like dumb little idiots. And we found the knife still covered in blood. One of the guys picked it up and took it back to the school. Luckily, it was a simple case and the guy was already arrested, or we could have messed up the evidence for the case. But needless to say, that was what put it in my mind that the murder had actually happened and that I needed to be more careful. When I was younger, I used to have really intense visual hallucinations, some normal stuff, glowing orbs, floating hands, that kind of thing. But the creepiest thing that I ever saw was my own dead body on the floor in front of me, wearing the exact same clothes I was wearing at the time. You know, I literally just heard this the other day, but apparently if you drink more than 6 cups of green tea a day or something, you can start having hallucinations, apparently. I don't know if that's true, and I do not endorse anyone testing it out or whatever, because why the hell would you want to drink 6 or more cups of green tea anyway? This might not be the caliber of the other stories here, but this freaked me out when I first saw it. So like 4 years ago when I was in high school, I used to exercise in the basement of my house, which is connected to the garage because my house is built into the side of a hill. Anyway, I'm exercising when I hear this loud clicking noise coming from the garage. I had no idea what it was. It was like 10 p.m. and everyone else was either asleep or in their bedroom on the other side of the house. I opened the door to the garage and I can't even comprehend what I was looking at. A bat had gotten its wing stuck to some fly tape and the clicking was its teeth against its bone. It was trying to bite off its arm. The clicking was so loud. I'm picturing it, the imagery, the darkness. It sounds creepy as hell. Hell, I remember one time I walked into my kitchen, got this weird colored LED light thing in it, and I turn it on, pitch black room turns to pure red, scared the crap out of me. But this is way creepier. The bat, the imagery, the darkness, the lateness, it's all perfect. It's way scarier than my thing. Back in college, a junkie broke a window to get into my apartment, stole some stuff, a camera, some of my roommate's girlfriend's jewelry, whatever. Called the police, boarded up the window, and started to go to bed. Until my roommate pulled back his covers and found a blood-soaked rag hidden under his sheets. The guy had cut himself on the window and hidden the rag. Still no idea why he bothered. I want to say it was his attempt at hiding DNA evidence, but obviously it was a very bad attempt. When I was 13, me and my friends were hanging around town like usual. We went to the park first in the morning. We saw a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was wearing a hood and he had a long beard. He had a can of beer and got up and started walking toward us, so we ran. Later on, we were taking a shortcut through the library's car park to go to McDonald's, and we saw the same guy standing by some bushes staring directly at us. 2 of my friends, girls, started dancing for some reason. They hadn't seen him. It was only me that saw him. I told my best friend Walter, and we tried to get everyone else to hurry up. Walter turned around to check everyone and saw the guy in the bushes now. His fly was undone and his dangly bits were hanging out. We ran as fast as we could, and we didn't see him any more times after that. I should certainly hope not. So this was pretty weird for me. My mom used to take me and my brother to the beach every summer for a week. Well, one year we're walking along the beach and we get pretty far. I was probably around 8 or 10 years old, so it felt pretty far to me, for whatever that's worth, to where the beach got kind of desolate. There we saw something lying in the sand. My mom just said it was a sea slug or some kind of worm from the ocean, and I bought it. Well, a few years later, I have the distinct memory of having a sudden Clarence moment and thinking to myself, that was no worm, that was a man's dangly bits. Yes, someone had cut off a man's dangly bits and it somehow ended up on a beach on the East Coast. A likely story, but it might also be something that is known as a geoduck, which does very much look like a one-eyed wiggly worm. Bus ride on vacation in Greece, windy mountain road, suddenly a load of bees, then really lots of bees, then all the bees. Rounded a corner to see a truck on its side, broken beehives all over the place. As our driver sped up to get away from the bees, I'm pretty sure I saw a flash of the driver of the crash truck falling to the ground, covered from head to toe in bees. Always assumed he was not getting up from that. Death by bees is not a way I would like to go, nor is it something I would like to witness. I was on an international flight, and upon landing, the flight attendant was unable to wake the lady in the seat directly behind me. They called the paramedic upon landing, but it was obvious that she was dead. I heard them say, "She's dead," and they made us all get off the plane so they could remove the body. Perhaps not creepy, but more of a "did that really just happen" type of moment for me. Also, when I was 16, I saw a guy get capped. It was on Thanksgiving, and that's about all I remember about it. In comparing the two plane stories that we have where people died on them, I can't help but think, how is it on one side you had people be like, "It's okay, young man, just stay there while this corpse is on top of you," and the other one where, reasonably, "Okay, everyone just get off the plane while we get the paramedics in here." Just different mindsets, I guess, or company process? Either way, I prefer one to the other. Not really nearly as creepy as most of these stories, but a few years ago, I was kayaking in western North Carolina. Beautiful day, pretty calm river, but the water was low and rocks were out in force. I kept having to push them off. At one point, I was coming up to a medium-sized brownish rock and preemptively tried to push off it and moved it. Thinking, that's weird, I continued to push it, only to turn around and realize that it was a dead dog. The face looked kind of mutilated, and now that I'd dislodged it from whatever kept it in place, it rode the white water and followed me down for a while. The worst part was that I kept finding them. 4 dead dogs, all seemingly killed violently, floating down the river with me, bumping against my kayak. That legitimately sounds like the worst kayaking trip ever. My friend and I had permission to go over to this abandoned house to basically loot what's left of the house and keep what we picked out. The house was empty except for junk and empty pill bottles and medication. The garage, however, was filled by the mounds of crap the previous tenants had left over. As we're rummaging through the crap and books, I find a bag filled with gun parts and triggers, lower receiver, barrel and firing pins, and a banana mag and another gun that was just missing the stock and firing pins. Gold mine. I quickly pocket that crap in my backpack and continue searching after finding this amazing loot, and I continue up into the attic. I find a small journal and a bunch of meds and needles and a bunch of government files and folders with red tape all over. The documents had redacted black lines and stuff, so all I could make out was that they had an operation initiated for deploying weapons or something. So after that, I read the journal. The journal belonged to the wife of the man who lived there. At first, it started off very dark. Stuff like he would start coming home late at night without announcing himself and would mutter and get angry. Later, he was being treated with meds for which I don't know and don't remember what meds was left in the attic, and apparently was a paranoid schizophrenic and was extremely abusive and would hurt the wife and not remember doing that a few seconds afterwards. She spiraled into depression and talked about self-deletion and stuff. Then one of her friends took her to church and it seems to make her feel better. The last time she saw him alive was when she went to get his meds refilled and later came home to find him dead by self-deletion. He had a lot of firearms and the police confiscated most of the guns. Shocked after reading it, I found another diary or book written by the husband, and it was filled with poems about his wife, life, death, etc. His poems were nice, but I always keep wondering what really happened to the guy. I don't have the diary anymore, nor a photographic memory or evidence. You'll just have to take my word for it. Well, that just made me sad. I left my pillow in the car at a hotel parking lot outside of Atlanta as a kid. I, of course, went back to go get it at night, turned a corner only to be met with a hobo touching himself. Scarred me for life. I haven't had anything too creepy happen to me, but my dad has seen a lot of stuff. He used to be an accident investigator, vehicle accidents in Iran. He's had 2 accidents that are burned into the back of his skull. The first was a bus that had some sort of metal pole, sorry for the lack of a better word, go through the front and skewer passengers. He explained how when they opened the bus door, there was blood spilling down the steps. The other was when he was at the police station where he worked. Before I start, let me say that it was a tradition to turn your truck's light off when you pass a police station. At this station, they had a sign saying not to because it caused a lot of car accidents. So what happened was that there was this 18-wheeler driving down and he decided to turn his lights off. At the same time, on the other side of the street, there were 3 young guys, ages somewhere from 18 to 21, in a car that would resemble a Mini Cooper. They had the stereo on full blast and pretty much having a good time. As the young guys were driving, they didn't see the 18-wheeler coming their way. I guess what happened was they didn't see it and pretty much drove on the wrong side of the road. You can guess what happened. I remember my dad saying how the music on the small car stereo went completely silent right when they crashed. The 3 guys died on impact. Worst part? The truck driver came in with his food pretty much saying, "Hey, where can I go eat?" Emotionless and not caring that he just killed 3 people. My dad and the other guys working there, they were friends, took the guy into a room and beat the crap out of him. I was a 13-year-old kid sliding down the side of a gravel pit in an old quarry. The pit was located close to a private graveyard dating to the 17th and 18th centuries. On what would be my last slide down the side of the pit, a skull rolled down after me, landing with a dry rattle against the small of my back. I ran home and told my mother. I was panicking. Ultimately, the police were called. A high school teacher of mine, a man with an anthropology degree, was called in when it apparently became quite obvious that this was nothing recent. It turns out that the skull belonged to a person who had died of tuberculosis, as was not uncommon during colonial times, of being a possible victim of a vampire attack. They had been buried outside of the graveyard, face down. At some point after they had been buried for a number of years, they were dug up and some of their bones were rearranged. The rattle I heard from the skull was due to the individual's canines having been removed, and they were found inside the skull. I had no idea about people from the 17th or 18th century being like, oh, tuberculosis, no, vampire attack, and stuff like that. But there's also something really entertaining to me. It's so like, TV show-esque, I guess. Obviously, fiction imitates reality, but like the whole call the teacher from the high school with the anthropology degree, I don't know, that's just fun to me. Parents of uncool children, when did you realize your child wasn't one of the popular kids? My oldest son has always been quiet and a bit of an introvert. He's tall for his age, lanky, wears glasses, plays trombone in the school band, and is a complete computer geek. There were never any delusions that he was going to be one of the popular kids. That said, he is popular amongst his fellow nerdlings. My youngest son has always been pretty popular, especially among the girls. We have had little girls calling the house, giggling and asking to speak to him since he was in 4th grade. He's in middle school now, and I fear what it will be like when he gets into high school. My son got locked in his tuba case by the other band kids. He's not even cool among the not cool kids. I know my daughter is uncool. Why? I have no idea. She's a great kid, very outgoing and funny in that 3rd grade kind of way. She gets picked on a bit for the things she likes. Hello Kitty, Barbie, MLP, etc. As a kid, I was super unpopular too, and I tell her all the time not to worry about it. She'll find that group of friends who love her to death and want to play with her. She came home very excited last month because a new girl in school had the same Hello Kitty backpack. They made fast friends, and I hope they stay friends. A single dad is pretty cute and uber dorky like me. This topic could turn dark at any moment, so enjoy the wholesomeness while you can, viewers. My daughter has always been quick to make friends. She always has someone to play with at the park. Kids follow her around like she's their leader, and she has a blast. In school, though, she's not popular. She's the oldest in her class because her birthday is so late in the year, so she's taller than everyone, started losing her teeth before the others, and more mature than some of them. The other kids pick on her, call her names, hide her things, make fun of her bunny teeth, adult teeth that are still at that cute but a little too big for your face stage, and give her a hard time. I don't understand it. She's so popular at playgrounds and parks, but she's an outcast at school. Ah, the days of adolescent playground bullying. Been there, sister, been there. My oldest is a crybaby. I love him a bit, but he's a whiner of the highest order. I guess I realized it about when he left kindergarten. He's in 5th grade now, and he still curls up in a ball with real tears whenever he thinks he might be in trouble, even if he isn't, which he almost always isn't. I love him. But it's sad. When they reminded me of myself, my middle child loves video games and is amazing in academics and has mild autistic tendencies. My eldest loves bugs and animals and gets distracted easily. Neither one of them is prom king or queen material. The youngest is a born cheerleader. Why do I have all of those not good tendencies? I also love bugs. I also like video games, but I'm not good at academics. When he cried all the time in 1st through 3rd grade, then in 5th grade he insisted he was going to be a dragon hunter. That continued for a few years. He actually researched getting grants so he could travel to Europe to dig up dragon bones and prove they existed. Then he got into drawing swords and writing stories involving the swords. It's all good. I accepted him as he is and got him playing Magic and D&D. Now he watches anime all the time and is working with people to develop and write an online RPG and site while doing online schooling and working 2 part-time jobs. I figured he'd never give me a grandchild, but she's due in July. The best thing a child can do is surprise and make proud a good parent who's always supported them. I don't know if she's uncool yet because she's too little, but I witnessed a situation that brought up a lot of feelings. My 4-year-old daughter went to a birthday party of some little girl from her kindergarten. They had these mini blow-up jumping castles. I noticed 2 little girls standing at the entrance of one that blocked it when my daughter tried to get in and made up some rule about why she couldn't. I did laugh my butt off when my daughter immediately thought, screw it, and just ran around and back to the other entrance, but the girls got up and went to the other one when my daughter hopped in, leaving her in there alone. I got really depressed just watching her play by herself and the other girls being mean. Part of me wanted to deflate the other castle, sealing the little girls in a rubbery tomb. The other wanted to run over and just hug my daughter and never let go. Needless to say, I bought her a lot of lollies and played with her like crazy after the party. But then, a few days later when I dropped her off at kindergarten, some of the girls called out to her and ran over and started playing. I can't figure out toddler social dynamics. There is a 10-year difference between me and my youngest brother, and I first noticed that he was just not a cool person when I picked him up from school and found out that he has a tendency to hiss like a cat at people when they said something he didn't like. God, I love the little weirdo. I'm an older sister by 8 years, and I noticed my middle school sister wasn't popular simply on the basis she got bullied so much that she had to hide in the library during lunch, and she takes an odd route home to avoid the kids who actually corner her on the way home. She's the extremely shy type, and the butthole kids don't really help that. They stole her lunch and spit in it once apparently, and she came home depressed one day because of it. Sometime around middle school, it became apparent that regardless of who she tried to be friends with or how much effort she put into being social, she was always the odd one out, always the friend and never the best friend. No one calls her to hang out or go anywhere. She doesn't date. I still haven't figured out why, unless it is basic, not wanting to be seen with someone who might be a lesbian. This is the southern US after all. It's killing her. It's killing me to see how isolated and left out she is. She's nearly done with high school, and I can only hope that college will be better. For now, she has an online group she considers friends. There's that, at least. I can't deny that when I was young, it took me a lot of time to learn how to socialize a lot better with people in person, but until that point, I had a lot of online friends and interactions that really did help keep me going. It does make me sad to think that without the interconnectivity of the internet, some people would just be completely alone, and that thought honestly breaks my heart. It's why I try to be as nice as possible to people where and when I can. My son, who is almost 15, has several learning disabilities, ADD, dyspraxia, and mild Asperger's. He finds it very difficult to make friends and keep them. He also struggles with low self-esteem. I've tried to get him into all sorts of different hobbies, but he's not interested. The only thing he loves is video games, to the point that he could easily play them for 15 hours a day. He also has a very offbeat humor, which most people don't get. I love him to bits because he's my son and his heart is in the right place, but I do worry about how he's going to get through life and form healthy friendships and relationships. Man, parents have so much to worry about when they have kids and stuff, and it totally makes sense. But even when I was a kid in high school, I was going through a point where I thought, man, I'm never going to make friends. But I was lucky enough to meet people that appreciated and loved me and just generally helped me become the person I am today. And hell, I ain't no success story, but I certainly like who I am, at least on the best of days. But that's one of the hardest things in life, growing up and learning to love yourself. I had 6 children, 5 girls and a boy. Some were popular and some weren't. My unpopular, kind of reserved and socially awkward during primary school son is in med school and will be a doctor next year. I don't think popularity is necessarily a good criteria for judging how your child is doing. In some classes, the kind of behavior that allows you to fit into a class and be popular are not all that positive, such as bullying more vulnerable children. I think the most important thing is for children to be true to themselves themselves and who they are, and not compromise that to fit in. Hopefully they will find friends who are like them. I thought it was interesting that the creators of South Park were nerdy kids who didn't fit in. Sometimes the most successful school children are not all that successful when it comes to real life, and the children who are strong enough to be themselves can be quite successful. That is certainly true in some cases, but sometimes not. This isn't really what this is about, but I'm glad that they brought it up. My youngest son is a future neckbeard. He's a great kid and very active in Boy Scouts. He's 14 and only needs a few things to get his eagle. He can easily achieve it before 16. He's good in math and science and very well spoken when something interests him. He can explain plants and trees and geology of an area to younger Scouts on a level far above the average 14-year-old. But outside of Scouts, he is very socially awkward. He has a hard time making friends. Unless they are Scouts or gamers, he's overweight but not morbidly obese, and I guess average looks. I wish more of my wife's genes had kicked in. At home, it's all Xbox and computers. He has no interest in the outside world. If I ask, hey, let's go walk the dog down by the river, I just get, no, I don't feel like it. If I'm working in the yard on a hot day and my wife says, why don't you go and see if your dad could use some help? His reply is usually, if he needs me, he'll come get me. He's had his few middle school girlfriends that we all know are counted in weeks, but when they break up, he's devastated and becomes recluse for a while. His room is generally clean, but it smells of feet and butt. He won't shower or change clothes unless we tell him to. We actually held off to see how long he would do it. He wore the same t-shirt for 5 days over summer break. I didn't ask about underwear and socks. We just explained it and told him to go shower and change. A lot of these stories are really old and I'm just sat here like, man, I want to know how these people turned out. Like, did they surprise them? Yes? No? I hope so. I realized when we moved to a community with its own playground. My daughter is 5. She's so loving and sweet and very intelligent, but she's not good at making friends. She has no problem asking anyone to play, but most of the kids immediately shut her down and walk away. I have no clue why. Sometimes they'll give her some bullcrap line about her having to stay in the ice castle, which is one corner of the playground. She asks if she can come out, but they tell her no, and then they go off by themselves. So she sits there, dejected and defeated. She's such a genuinely good child and a good person, and I don't know why the other kids treat her like they do. I remember the same thing happening to me when I was her age. Kids can be so cruel. I knew before kindergarten that our son was not cool. He's an artsy, strange, nerdy kid that is bad at sports. He couldn't catch a ball when all the other boys could. He's also brilliant, has near perfect pitch, can tell a joke better than anyone his age, and is particularly empathetic. He always consoles whoever is having a bad day. One of the aspects that clued me into his wonderful nerdiness is that he'd construct a pretend world with all sorts of characters and scenarios, and could not understand why the other kids, excepting a few like-minded lovable oddballs, did not want to participate. He's picked on. It is amazing how cruel 5-year-old children can be. He's the target of the alpha male types. Until 2nd grade, he did not realize that he was uncool, but then it hit him. He's now 10 and in 4th grade. His teachers tell us that he is well liked, but he does not have any friends, which my wife sees as a problem, but I don't. He asked me once when he was 7 why other kids didn't like him. I pointed out that a lot of people like him, just that the cool kids didn't want to include him in their clique, and that's okay. I let him know that neither his mother or I were ever cool, and we've done okay for ourselves in this world. Aside from being a total geek for old school Mega Man, my 11-year-old is crazy proper and very white in an almost all-black school. He gets called Whitey constantly, and kids from the bus have beat the crap out of him and his little brother on more than a few occasions. He will now choke anyone that puts him on the defensive, which comes off a little bit like a serial killer in training, but to the proper thing, I once got a call from the principal because my son had set up a meeting with him, stating that he needed to switch schools because these kids all have behavioral issues and I can't get an education in this environment. No snark or anything like that. He was completely on point and very upset that the teacher didn't have her classroom under control. There is an HR director hiding in my kid's body, a little off, but damn, do I like my boy. I am a much older sister, which is sort of similar in a lot of ways. I realized my brother wasn't one of the popular kids when I went to visit his school to show off the high school band program. The cute-looking, well-spoken kids tend to sit together, and so do the less cute, dorky kids. I always sort of guessed, though, because he'd always been that weird gamer kid with beta tendencies and hardly ever got invited to birthday parties. It was just confirmed when I went to visit him. Damn, girl, slapping your brother with the beta tendencies. Cruel, cruel woman, even if it is true. My son is 10. I think I realized he's not part of the popular crowd last year. He had a sort of falling out with his best and only friend. After they stopped hanging out, I'd ask him who he played with at recess or who he sat with at lunch. And he'd tell me he played alone and sat at the end of the lunch table alone by the trash can. It broke my heart. He's such a sweet kid. Pretty sensitive, quiet, but not super shy. More of an observer. He's not the first to jump into an activity, but give him time and he'll participate. His interests have always been different than those of the popular crowd. We tried various sports, a season of soccer and a basketball camp, only to come out of those with a lesson on teamwork and how it's not fair to the rest of the team to quit halfway through the season. He's had ambitions to be a paleontologist since second grade. He can remember facts about dinosaurs that he's read 2 years ago. He's incredibly intelligent. He's also a huge Star Wars fan. His favorite is The Empire Strikes Back. We put him in Cub Scouts so he can socialize with kids who aren't into sports, but by the time he joined, most of the boys in the troop already knew each other. I try to dress him in what the kids are wearing, Hollisters, Aero, etc. He has no preference for what he wears, and if I can take away one thing that kids always single other kids out for, then I'll do it. Overall, I think he'll be okay. He's got 2 to 3 friends with similar interests. He's a smart kid. If he can get through middle school and high school, I think he'll do just fine. I wonder if he's studying dinosaur bones as we speak. My parents moved and my little sister had to start high school in a new town, and I was worried she wouldn't make many friends. I was excited when she joined a small group and started hanging out with them until she wore a fake tail to school one day. Oh dear. Spits out cereal in the morning. Oh my god, my sister's a furry! My high school-age daughter wanted to drive into the city to watch a Wes Anderson film and eat at her favorite vegetarian Indian place for her birthday. We live in the rural South. You ignorant fool. What was cool 10 years ago and what was cool now have completely switched. Your daughter wasn't unpopular, she was a damn trendsetter. At my daughter's first parent-teacher conference in first grade, I asked the teacher how my daughter was doing socially. I had noticed that there was a little talk from her about friends, unlike kindergarten, and the teacher paused uncomfortably and said something about my daughter being very bright, and sometimes bright kids don't have patience for things they find silly, which sets them apart a little, but that I shouldn't worry. My daughter will graduate high school this year, and she only has a couple of close friends, one of which she's had since third grade, and even those she doesn't really see or hang out with often. My son took longer to be obvious to me because his elementary school teacher flat lied to me and told me that he was socially doing just fine and had quite a few friends. My son does normally have a small circle of friends that he's comfortable with, but he's never been and will never be one of the popular kids. Neither one of my kids are bullied. My daughter was in elementary school, but not since, and I attribute a lot of that to the way our school handles the bright kids. Starting in 7th grade, the high achievers and gifted kids, my daughter is a high achiever, my son, gifted, are separated out into Honors Academy. For 7th and 8th grade, they only have classes with each other, and they do a lot of forced group work and social interaction in addition to the regular curriculum. Because they're so separate from the rest of the school, there's a little chance for them to be targeted, and they form friendships with their fellow weirdos. I had a lot of doubts when they first introduced this program. My daughter's 7th grade class was the inaugural year, but it definitely seems to have resulted in happier kids. Neither of my kids have a ton of friends or in the neighborhood of popular, but they have a niche at school and feel safe and able to be themselves, which is great. Of course, their district also instituted a character program about 5 years ago, which also seems to have had some impact on how the kids interact. With all the talk of the gifted kids curriculum, I'm thinking about Malcolm in the Middle a little bit. God, that and My Name is Earl are absolute TV gold. If you haven't seen them, definitely check them out. I've known since I met him for the first time. He's my stepson, so we first met when he was 5, and he was just the biggest little whiny brat you could ever meet. He's now almost 9 and still a bit of a little crybaby, but less so. He's had no friends at school because he's an obsessive Star Wars geek. Husband and I take blame for this. We're both huge fans, but he was named to surpass us and hit the freaky stage. It is all he talks about, and it tends to alienate the other kids. But I think what truly does it is when he acts like a Lego person. All day, every day, as long as we're not running errands, he walks like they do on Lego cartoons and holds his hands in a C shape to mimic their hands. Talks like Yoda fairly often as well. He's the kid having a great time by himself, playing all the different roles in his game. I think all this makes me love him more. He's a little awkward genius, and I wouldn't want him any other way. Oh, and I don't worry about him picking up chicks later in life because he already has a girlfriend. He tells me he hasn't gotten a new one because the girls in his new class just aren't pretty to him. Apparently, he's got some high standards. I can't deny it. I'm picturing it. I'm picturing that little boy doing his Yoda voice and doing the Lego walk, and I'm just thinking, trouble in Lego City there is. I secretly hope my daughter doesn't turn out cool. I want her to have some good, trustworthy, and responsible friends, and I want her to be a kid who likes to read, do art, exercise, and chill with dad playing video games. I have a vague idea why people do it, but there's a specific reason I read that one. So basically, the whole thing where it's like, because you're a cool kid immediately means you're kind of a piece of crap. That is not the case. People are not arbitrary two-dimensional things. You can be cool and be nice. You can be uncool and a total douchebag. Hell, I'm pretty sure most of the time there are like several opinions on who is actually the cool kids at school, because schools are big, especially high schools. I remember turning around to my friend and being like, wait, you think they're the cool kids? I thought they were the cool kids. But I meant it more in like, no, they're cool. They are actually cool and nice and everyone likes them. But I concur, being a dad and having your child play video games with you it's a nice thought. My daughter was in developmentally delayed classes for 2 years of pre-K, then had a special helper for kindergarten with speech every day. We moved, and in first grade she was different and could not make friends. She was received from speech, and remedial reading put her on Adderall for ADHD without hyperactivity, and she makes A's and B's but still different. Her storytelling was a little weird. I've always been well liked but an introvert. She's an extrovert and was not well liked. I started giving her social tips. Ask what they want to do. Let them do the talking. Ask about what they like. People like to talk about themselves. Now she has a ton of friends. So weird that it worked. I think I've always known but never cared. Popularity means nothing later in life. My only concern is that they find a few friends to hang out with at school. Man's got his priorities straight. It's not about gaining popularity or anything like that. It's having friends, true friends, and, kindling joy and all that stuff. Best thing you can do for your kids at the end of the day is make sure they're happy, safe, and you love them. I mean, damn, with all the anxieties that parents must have with raising kids, it's no wonder that you screw up in a couple of places. But, like I said, just gotta make sure that you're doing your best. People who have been on reality TV shows, what's rigged and what's not? My friend was on What Not to Wear, and I was in the audience of people who were there to react when she came out from behind the curtain with her new look. She came out over and over again, but our cheering was never enthusiastic enough for the producers. After about 10 takes, we were screaming our heads off, totally hysterical, as if we'd just seen her rise from the dead. So that part was fake. I thought she just looked alright. Sob stories on singing shows. It's not the contestant's fault. I made it through a few rounds for a well-known singing show, and they beg you for a sob story. On my very first application form, I was asked about the most difficult moment in my life, what obstacles I'd overcome to be there, had I ever experienced bullying, etc. They pretty much make you tell them a sob story. So I wrote all about my heartbreak when I ran out of coffee. I have always thought there are far too many sob stories on those shows. My aunt and uncle were on Love It or List It. They had them record both endings, and the network chose which one they thought was best. They're still in the house, and they love it, but the show says they listed it. Already I don't know half of these shows, and I'm actually really excited to find out about obscure or weird reality game shows or something that I just don't know about. My cousin was on a Toronto dating show called Matchmaker many years ago. She said it was completely completely scripted, and she met her blind date before filming so the producers could go over the script with them. They were given a list of ridiculous and racy questions to ask each other and encouraged to make out if they actually liked each other or to cause a scene and be dramatic if they didn't really click. I mean, when you're thinking about all kinds of reality television that there are, dating shows are most definitely the most likely to be fake because, you know, if it's blind dating especially, like, things can go wrong there. Really bad things can go wrong there. So it makes sense that they'd be like, hey, this is all fake. This is actually the guy that you're going to be meeting and stuff. My daughter and her boyfriend were on divorce court. They were not married, and the show's producers helped them tailor their story, which was completely made up. To be more interesting, they are now married, and since they've already been divorced, it should last forever. Some of my friends went on cash cab. One guy was chosen the day before and told to come with up to 4 friends to a certain spot the next afternoon. They met a producer who hailed the cab and were told they were going to a game show. They had to reshoot getting into the cab because my one friend said something like, "What are the chances we're on our way to another game show?" I have worked on several reality TV shows. Some are more fake than others, but they are all heavily scheduled and formatted, never spontaneous. I worked on a certain MTV dating show where one of the contestants tried to escape the house in the middle of the night, and one of the production assistants had to tackle him in the front yard and drag him back into the house. It's like prison. They are completely cut out from the outside world. No computer, books, phones, watches, and they are fed mostly booze. They all go insane. Also, if the show doesn't air, they don't win their prize money. This is a standard for all competition reality shows. I think I remember there being an episode of Big Brother or something, you know, back when it was like a new thing, I'm pretty sure, and they all had to like sit in a box or something for like the entire day, or it was like the last person out of the box wins the challenge, which, yeah, that does sound pretty ridiculous and just maddening. I have a friend who signed up to audition for a show that she thought was The Bachelorette, or something similar. I guess it's standard practice to not give the actual name of the show and just say, we need good-looking, energetic young women for blah blah blah. So she got called back, went through a few different interviews and a screen test. Finally, they tell her that the concept is that she will be running a pawn shop with another woman. She is a dental assistant with no experience remotely related to the pawn business. Pawn Queens ended up being on for 2 seasons, and they gave her a backstory about how/why she got interested in the pawn business. Not exactly shocking, but it was pretty interesting to see that they basically looked for hot girls first, then put them into a proven concept, Pawn Stars type reality show. A friend of mine was on Shark Tank recently. The episode hasn't aired yet, so we don't know how they will edit the story to be, but they did get an actual deal with actual money from Mr. Wonderful. My father is a dealer in a particular variety of memorabilia and also fairly well known as an authenticator of said memorabilia. He was on a show featuring storage units a few years ago. The show crew peppered a storage unit with some of my father's own collectibles. The hosts found them, then brought them back to my father to be appraised. He then offered to purchase his own items back from the hosts. Was on an episode of MTV Made. It wasn't super scripted, but certain things were added to make the kids look stupid. On our episode, the producers had socks stuffed inside a kid's drum to make them sound bad, even though the kid didn't actually do that. Stuff like that. But the script had room for ad-libs, and the show was fine with that as long as nobody said anything too crazy or suggested anything they couldn't deliver on. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids on the show go back to how they were before almost immediately after filming. People can totally be who they want to be, but why apply to the show? And also, it kind of sucks when the show drops a butt ton of money on you. Our episode involved paying for an appearance from Finger 11 when they were huge, and it ends up being a waste for everything other than getting a TV episode out of it. I was on a show geared towards preteens and teenagers that tried to imitate Fear Factor on YTV. They had us compete in various unique athletic competitions and other things. Most of it was surprisingly real. We actually did compete. Our scores were based on our performance in the task. The one thing that wasn't real was that the episode made it look like everything happened in a day, when in reality, it took about 5 days to film. Overall, it was a really cool experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. Hey, we got a nice one. A friend of mine worked as an art director on the American version of Super Nanny. She said pretty much everything was real, maybe editing together to make it a bit more dramatic, but the family interactions were genuine, and she said Jo Frost is a very sweet, warm woman who really does her best for the kids. I'm not sure if I prefer Super Nanny to be fake or not, because some of the children could be vile, and some of the parents, if I remember correctly, were kind of not very receptive to their children's needs either in some cases. Every single thing is fake. I was on a cake competition show. The judges recorded 2 takes for every comment, 1 positive and 1 negative, so the editors could put it together however they wanted. They rolled the clock back an hour so everyone else could finish. We had over 3 months to plan our spontaneous cake. Oh yeah, and while we won by the judges' vote, a producer decided one of the other cakes would film better for the big reveal, so we didn't win even though we should have. I was on Restaurants Impossible a couple years ago. They say they have a $10,000 budget for the renovation. Definitely does not mean they use it. The host, Robert Irvine, was only there for like an hour a day of the 3-ish day venture just to get in the way and whine about things for the camera. They made up this whole story about how my boss would lose everything and cause so much stress on his marriage and family if the restaurant failed. They had us walk this direction with a sullen look to show that we felt underappreciated as employees. We had 4 employees actually walk out because of some of the comments Robert made. We also did not get paid any extra for any of this. But while all of that was annoying, I will say this. The Food Network did pay almost $4,000 for a very local construction crew to come in, which is awesome for local business and support. The food was very awesome, and I got to learn some insane techniques from the world-class chefs at the very start of my career. I am a chef myself now. It was a very neat, exciting thing for a small town and definitely brought our community together, and while the business did still end up failing a year and a half later, my boss was totally fine because he bought out another restaurant and is now a very successful person elsewhere. Kinda sucks that they feel they need to play up the drama aspect of it, but I think it's good that they at least are there to actually do some good in that case, which, a little bit of good, little bit of bad makes it more interesting. I was on an episode of Extreme Guide to Parenting. My mom is a hypnotherapist for a living, and so they interviewed my brothers and me about getting hypnotized to do chores and get good grades. They had us say things like, my mom using neuro-linguistic programming to make us do things and that she hypnotizes us on a daily basis. I was 14 and I had to pretend that I had a crush on this boy, and my mom taught me how to hypnotize him to like me. All the parts with me in it were cut out, thank God, but my twin brothers got a decent amount of airtime. All of it was scripted. It was basically a publicity stunt on my mom's part to get more business, and I don't blame her. It worked pretty effectively, and we got a $5,000 check for letting them use our house to film. To clarify, everything my mom said was true to a degree, and she has hypnotized me in the past. But hypnotherapy is not what everyone thinks it is. It is a way of gaining more self-control, not less, and in no way is it someone controlling your mind. There are subtle cues you can give people to get them to agree with you, such as nodding your head when you ask for something and touching their shoulder, but other than that, it is mostly used to help people stop smoking or biting their nails and even improving concentration and avoiding panic attacks. Just like another therapist might help you, my mom does it with hypnosis. As for exploiting my brothers and me, it was really fun and I laughed a lot when I saw the final cut. I thought my family didn't seem so bad when compared to others that I saw in the same episode, but I can't judge. Either way, the whole plot was made up, but it is true that my mom taught us how to exit something called fight or flight mode when in non-life-threatening situations, like when you panic. She taught us to think clearly. Nothing as extreme as how they portrayed us in the show. Honestly, it's counterintuitive to make a show that puts my mom in a bad light for business reasons, and so while everything was scripted, she did maintain her usual air of professionalism. The directors just took all the parts that made her look as bad as possible. I'm genuinely enjoying this one because not only do I get a bit of insight as to what is actually fake in these TV shows, the entertainment factor, but also the utility factor, like with the Ultimate Chef Experience or whatever it was a couple stories ago. Diners, drive-ins, and dives. Kinda real. Maybe. 50-50. Friend owns a butcher shop and happens to be the supplier of meats to this restaurant where an episode of DDD was going to be filmed, and asked me to come along with him. We were part of the crowd scene where guys come around and ask other people things like, so how's the burger, etc. Thing is, not one of the people in the restaurant during that scene was a random restaurant customer. Everyone was a special invited guest of the restaurant owners. producers. Once we arrived, the producer dude placed us in seats and they made a few people move tables and booths for a better overall crowd look, I presume. They gave us some preliminary instructions: make sure phones are off, don't ask for guys' autographs at all, don't pay attention to camera, etc. And then we waited and waited and waited. After maybe 45 minutes or so, the waitstaff just started bringing out food and placing it on tables. No one had ordered anything, but the staff just started bringing stuff out. Once a decent number of people had dishes at their table, the servers would continue bringing food out, but this time with camera peeps behind them filming them as they took plates to tables. They did some interview shots with people eating, and when I watched the episode, it was edited to look as if they were responding to something the guy had said to them, even though he wasn't around at all at this point. Shortly after that, Guy Fieri comes in and everyone applauds, and he just sort of waves his hand at everyone quickly, never smiles, and goes back to typing on his phone. Now, I had always thought Guy Fieri looked kinda douchey, but was probably a nice person. No absolute total diva douchebag the entire time, never acknowledged the crowd, barely acknowledged the production crew, just kinda seemed like a douche. Literally was standing right beside a booth where someone was sitting, and the lady sitting there said something to him like, "Hey, we love your show." Guy Fieri just kinda does this half smirk and smile thing and never acknowledges the lady or anyone at her booth. Only, and I mean only, when the video guy would say, "Action," would he try to turn on the charm and actually talk to crowds of people, get excited and talk about the food and stuff. Later, after he filmed the restaurant scenes, they backed his Camaro out of a trailer and filmed all of the scenes where he's driving around. The crowd scenes were done at this point. My buddy and I were just hanging out and chatting with the owner and one of his managers. The restaurant kitchen scenes where they were going to film Guy and the chef prepping and making the food were filmed the day before, and the owner said it was the exact same thing. Zero interaction with Guy Fieri until the cameras were rolling. They even filmed some outtakes, which were somewhat pre-planned and set up in advance. Once the car scenes were all done, Guy Fieri heads back into the RV and we didn't see him again. The crew came around and did some other shots and interviewed some of the other staff and such. Overall, it was an interesting day. I have admittedly never had much of an opinion of Guy Fieri. Not surprising, ghost hunting shows are fake. What is surprising is how they do it. See those fancy instruments they carry that no one has ever heard of? They're actually remotes to each other. All you gotta do is split into two groups, and when one team is adjusting their settings, the other team is detecting ghosts. So simple, and you get twice the footage. Also, one time in a screening when the hunters were reviewing evidence, a producer whispered to me, "See that ghost shape behind the door? Yeah, that's the sound guy." Wow. Now that's actually interesting to me. It sounds kind of fun and makes ghost hunting shows, I don't know, kind of more entertaining. If anything, that's just a good idea to be like, yeah, we're gonna prank each other or something. Had a friend who worked on the Kardashians. They were filming a huge party. It was dead. No one doing anything. The producers asked if anyone had any ideas. Friends mentioned beer pong. Producers made him act like a guest and teach the mom to play to make the party look fun. Everything was fake. I heard from a tattoo artist that he had auditioned to be on Ink Master and met Kay Cutter, season 2, and he explained that to be a part of the show, they look for personality traits and flanderize the hell out of you to make a character that can create drama to the show. Kay Cutter did actually have a criminal record, so they used that to make him the bully of that season. The tattoo artist who I was talking with claimed Kay is actually a really cool and nice guy. I have never watched an episode of Ink Masters, and this is the first I'm hearing of a Kay Cutter. I worked on the Sing-Off and ABDC for several seasons in the contestant department. The performances and the performers were all real and really cool. I listened to the street corner rehearse Creep on stage one day and got goosebumps from how good they were. There are decisions made by producers to increase the market value of the show, like keeping a fourth group until the final round because they didn't want to lose a key demographic from the audience. The finale was always live and based on fan vote online, so that part was real. One season of ABDC, a contestant broke his leg. That was also sadly real, as I was there to witness call 911, the producers, and my manager. They were concerned about getting B-roll of him going into the ambulance. He was a really sweet kid, but these shows are exceptions in the industry, not the rule, and both have been cancelled. Went to a filming of American Ninja Warrior. They filmed all night with over 100 competitors, running the course back-to-back for around 7 hours. The only ones cheering like on the show were family members cameras on sidelines. Everyone else was kind of quietly observing. It was impossible to figure out who would make the show and who ended up on the cutting room floor. After watching the actual show on air, even completing the course didn't guarantee that your run would be shown. Several got over the break, so-and-so made it to the end of the course, cue 2-second cut of button press. The best bet to making it on air, outside of their stable of famous ninjas, was to fail on the course in a way that nobody else had. That very last bit about failing in a way that nobody else has yet, it just feels too true in not only people, but also just life. My brother-in-law surprised our family a few years back by taking us out to dinner, and at that dinner he announced that he was taking an internship in Peru. Turns out he was on a major US reality show and had signed an NDA and couldn't tell us where he was really going. He ended up being a semi-finalist, going all the way to the finale. He said the parts that they make especially dramatic, the parts where contestants stand in front of the judges and explain themselves and then ultimately one is sent off of the show, could take hours to film, and that each of them would have their reaction filmed a handful of times with the producers standing right there on set, acting as directors and coaches. He also said that the contestants were constantly supplied with booze of their choice and were encouraged to drink. He said people were under the influence of alcohol very frequently, but that it would never be evident as the cameraman would keep the drinks out of the shots. As far as the rigging of the results went, he said he was fairly certain that the producers were having the final say, but that the judges were included in the decision-making process. A friend of mine was on Cupcake Wars. His team actually came first. He said that the ingredients were partially random. The studio sent his team a list of 5 or so different ingredients that were potentials, and then 3 different themes. He had a plan for every single ingredient and theme if needed. Britain's Got Talent. There are several hidden rounds with producers before you get to the main stage with the judges. My cousin is a very talented musician and got to the last round before the auditions, but they said he didn't have the right image. They select the most watchable acts and usually try and avoid any act that's too professional in case they bow out and get a recording contract outside of the show's format. This is just concerning musicians at least, so not fake as such, but slanted. I know someone who went on Britain's Got Talent once, and I will simply say that they made a bit of a butt of themselves, but it was also kind of a mixture of their own decision making and the way that the scene was shot and edited. Undercover Boss is a joke. Everyone knows the show, everyone knows what's going on, everyone knows who the owner of the store is, and for those who don't, are a simple Google search away from knowing. I briefly appeared in an episode of Airport 24/7 Miami. My appearance was basically me doing my job the same way I would do without cameras rolling. The same was true of the stars of the show, since it wasn't like a traditional reality show where they needed to create a conflict. The airport does that organically. They got really lucky that some particularly noticeable events happened while they were filming, like when the fuel farm caught fire and exploded, or when 2 aircrafts collided on the taxiway. Everything they showed on the show actually happened, but editing did make some events seem more dramatic. Oh, is it bad that this subject is actually making me want to work on reality TV shows behind the scenes so I can laugh at the fact that a show is trying to manufacture conflict and whatnot? It just sounds so silly. Like something from a holy book where God, played by MTV, bursts into your life. And this Miami one was interesting because there's a day-to-day conflict going on there, but the MTV people just go, okay, you hate this guy, that guy hates that guy, you love this guy, and you hate that guy because she loves this guy. That kind of thing. And the thing is, I scarcely ever watch shows like this, but being on the inside, being behind the scenes and creating this stuff can be a harrowing but entertaining process. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I was on Love Island last year. It's a popular TV reality show in the UK. This year's is actually on at the moment. I guess people assume some is staged and rigged, but you have no idea how much. We were literally given scripts of arguments to have, things to say. You know when you see them having sex under the covers? Not happening. We would have to imitate this 5 to 10 times each, and the producers would choose the most realistic one. There is whole parts of the villa that you don't even see. Multiple camera camera rooms. Ever wondered how the islanders never clean but it always gets cleaned? There is literally cleaners, waiters, etc. in the whole time. Only about 6 hours a day and night are filmed. There is a director there saying cut and everything. You know, the £50,000 grand prize for the winner doesn't compare to the $75,000 we got for being in the villa. Regardless if we were there for 6 days or 6 weeks, when we got out, we had meetings and I had over 600 brands queuing up to work with me. Now I'm a nobody, and you wouldn't even recognize my name. Relationships aren't real. There is an agreement that is 100% for the show. Things are never how they seem. Also, we are shown the episodes every day. There is no will be cool to see what I look like on TV when I get out. There is also outside contact. That is just bullcrap. My jaw literally dropped on my 4th day when they showed us the show live on TV because of how different it was to reality. What was something you saw you were definitely not supposed to see? My severance check. Apparently someone at the payroll company addressed it to me instead of HR, opened it at my desk and laughed. Packed up my crap and left. I found a letter between my parents back when my dad was in the army 10 years before I was born, when cleaning out the house. He was saying how they should get a divorce because it just wasn't seeming to work out. When I was 16, they did end up getting a divorce, and I have never spoken to them about it. Leaving work late one evening, I saw the HR director and CFO in a dark office shredding papers. No, that's not a euphemism. I didn't say anything, but quietly walked on down the hall. 2 weeks later, we were raided by the SEC and several people were charged with cooking the books. Sounds like some Wolf of Wall Street stuff going on there. Back in 1997, I started work at a new job and took over the office of a salesman who had recently been fired. I was in IT using the same computer that had been set up for sales. My first task was to install all the software I'd need. The computer hard drive was almost full, so I poked around and found a ton of folders filled with smut. Went to my supervisor and he said to delete it, warning me that the salesman had been fired for downloading smut. Over the next few weeks, I kept finding secret smut folders on the company's network. Not only had he downloaded enough smut to max out his computer's HD, he had the network at about 90% capacity. When I was done deleting all of the folders I could find, the server capacity was less than 50%. Dude was seriously addicted to his smut. I wouldn't have just fired him. I would have booked therapy appointments on his behalf. Worked for a downtown metropolitan hotel for a long time, and I've seen a lot of stuff I wasn't supposed to see. Probably the worst was a kid with an old man. Checked this guy in at 1 a.m, not uncommon because people travel at different times, but he was alone. Like an hour later, he asked for something like a towel or blanket. Anyways, we dispatched our runner to deliver it. After the runner comes to me and says he thinks something is wrong because he caught a glimpse of someone and the old guy was trying hard to block the entrance. Being that we were supposed to take stuff like human trafficking seriously, I asked our maintenance guy to cut his power so we could get a call to come up and try to fix the problem. He does, and I go up with him to apologize for the inconvenience because the guy was a member. Sure enough, we hear a kid in the bathroom hiding. Try to ask who the kid was, and the old guy tried everything to shut us down, from throwing his status around to bribing. We called the cops and we let them deal with it. Just 2 days ago at a community pool, a teenage couple who entered into the pool area went into the hot tub, stood up to stretch my legs and looked over to, well, SX in the hot tub. It was midday. I cringed pretty hard, but I laughed even harder when the neighborhood cop showed up. I once arrived early to pick up a girl for a first date. She was renting a small garden apartment behind a bigger house. It was just after dusk and I walked around the corner. The sliding door was standing open, and she was inside walking around, brushing her hair, wearing only her underwear. She did not see me, so I just walked back around that corner and waited another 10 minutes. When I walked around again, she had a dress on. I never told her. The date went well, and I only got to see her underwear again several weeks later. When I was about 16, snooping in my parents' wardrobe, I found a diary written by my mother when she was 14 from the year 1970. Read some beautiful and brilliantly written entries about meeting and dating my dad, who was 16 at the time. Had to read a little between the lines in some slightly later entries as they were written with such flowery language. In one such entry, all of a sudden, she discloses that she's had an abortion, performed by one of my relatives, an anesthesiologist, and she has never told anyone. This is the reason that you don't poke around in people's diaries because you might find something that you never wanted to know. I was in elementary school playing basketball. I shot the ball, but it ended up going over the fence onto the other side of what was someone's backyard. My teacher requested that after school I knock on the door of the house where the ball had landed to get it back, and so I did. I did not expect a woman wrapped in a towel with one of her nipples revealed to answer the door. I was shocked, but carried on with my mission. For those wondering, she stated she did not have the ball. Back when I was a teenager, we hosted a New Zealander at our house for a couple of weeks. Guy gets to our place after the flight, and about 10 minutes later, I'm walking around my house to see where he's at. The door to his room is partially open, and the dude is laying face down on the bed and humping the ever-loving hell out of a pillow. I backed away slowly, like Homer when he saw a poo cheating on his wife. I felt bad for the pillow. My mom gave me an old laptop of hers when I was about 13, and I was scrolling through random pics she had left on it of my little brother's football game, and then boom, nudes. Years ago, a colleague had an old smartphone that he brought in to give to another coworker as theirs broke. The phone was sitting on the new owner's desk, but she hadn't yet tried it out. As it was still charging after months of not being used, we were talking about how cool it was of the coworker. Smartphones were not widespread yet, and I picked it up to see how it felt in my hand. I pressed a button, and the first thing that I saw was a Google search for lump on anus. I quickly put the phone back down. This must have been the last thing he searched for when he last used it a long time ago, and forgot about it. When I was 11, I walked into my mom's bedroom and saw my mom and her husband doing everyone's favorite number, and we never spoke about it. Years later, when I was 24, she walked into my bedroom and saw my boyfriend naked. We never spoke about that either. All probably for the best. My dad's Alcoholics Anonymous chips. Learned it's why my parents got divorced. Proud of him for being in recovery, though. When I was a young teen, I was once leaving my house to go do something in the neighborhood. As soon as I go out of the door, I heard my parents at the garage. My mother seemed to be in her car, and my father was sitting down behind her car and pleading with her not to leave. My parents were divorcing, and I saw a few scenes that I wish I never had. Not really horrific, but seeing your parents in emotional pain can be rough. No doubt. No doubt. The code to open all the doors in my primary school at the time. A lot of power to open any locked door for an 8-year-old. I don't know about anyone else, but I remember being a kid and being like, looking at the chain link fence in my primary school and going, I could climb that, I could escape, wanting to escape, thinking about escaping, but then I'd always chicken out and be like, oh God, but what would the consequences be? Am I going to get in trouble with the teachers? What would my mom do to me if I ran away from school for a day? Like, 8 to 10-year-old me, what are they going to do? I'd go straight home. And what would happen then? My mom would probably walk me all the way back to school, and it would just be a massive waste of time. I do conventions and corporate events for a living. Was once called into a room to fix a power cable. It was a meeting of a worldwide, well-known house paint manufacturer. It was a closed-door meeting, and I had to be let in to do my job quickly. They didn't stop talking as I did my work. We've pulled all the units from production and recalled all units on the shelves, but the ones still in transit cannot be recalled. They might be caught when they reach the sales floor if the retailers are still watching the recall, but it will have been weeks since we issued it. The guy who then responds to that states that they can prove they did their diligence in court with the recall, and any units sold to consumers will be the retailer's fault. I never did get to hear what the recall was for, but they seemed pretty tense about it, legally speaking. So I doubt it was quality control. I felt like I had witnessed the mafia talking about a murder. The owner of the club where my sister worked took an armload of shotguns out of his truck. It was about 3 a.m. and I was parked behind the bar waiting for her. The reason I know he didn't mean anyone to see is because he covered them with a tarp and he gave a good long stare around when he got out. Shady dude. He was up to every kind of no good. I literally scrunched down in my seat. I accidentally found someone's notice of performance improvement plan on our company open access SharePoint site. Went straight to my manager so they could quietly inform the manager of the person and have it removed. The person on the performance plan quickly became a top performer and closed the second biggest deal in the region. Not long after, their manager was replaced. Maybe they were always good. Maybe they saw the improvement report and thought, damn, I need to get my affairs in order. And they did it. In spades. I used to work in the basement of a pretty large hospital doing engineering work. They'll often cart dead bodies out of the hospital through the basement, so it's usually not a big deal. You tend to try and ignore it. One time, as I was finishing up a test in a pretty remote room, I walked out to an entire security detail escorting a body. I just got immediately shoved back into the room, so nothing really exciting happened, but I always wondered who that could have been. My third job I had at 17 was at a pizza place. I had 2 managers, one male, one female, and they were both married to other people. Well, I went to hand in my drawer at the end of the one shift and walked into the office, and there they were just making out with some heavy petting. Their spouses found out. They left their families, and then those 2 managers got married to each other. As far as I know, they're still together. Also, no, I didn't tell their families. I was 17. I didn't even know these people's spouses. Their families found out because they told them themselves because they both wanted divorces from their respective spouses. I tend to have a way of finding things out that I'm not supposed to due to my inquisitive nature, but one that comes to mind was when I left my last job. My general manager wasn't exactly a warm, woolly person and was not pleased that I was leaving. I had to get something out of the manager's office and saw my name in an email on the desk. She had told the other 2 managers to wish me the best of luck in my future career and that I would be missed. I was shocked because she actually took the time to send that out to them. Never heard that from any of them, but seeing it showed that she actually cared. Whenever I meet or hear someone say, I am an inquisitive person, I have an inquisitive nature, I just think, you're bloody nosy, which is hypocritical because I'm nosy too. On my way to work in the morning one day, and I'm on a train leaning up against a glass partition between 2 seats. The lady on the other side was doing the same thing, and as her mobile kept pinging with incoming messages, my attention was drawn to it, and because of the angle, I could see the text exchange. To summarize, she offered services of the scatological nature, and the person on the other end was complimenting her on how her mess didn't stink, and I'm going to leave it at that. Definitely not something I should have seen. What everyone made in my company salary-wise, CEO and all high ranks included. It was a very detailed Excel file meant for the owners of the company. For every tier you went up, that salary pretty much doubled. I was 12. I was trying to make my BMX bike into a long-forked chopper-style bike. There was an old man down the road that welded as a business. I had dropped my bike off for some welding on my forks. Went back several days later to pick up my bike. Walked into his shop just as another man pulled an enormous bag of the devil's lettuce out of a duffel bag. They both stopped and just stood there, staring at me for a moment. I turned around and noped the hell out of there. The men then proceeded to look at each other, say, well, that was kind of awkward. See you in a month or something? I suppose depending on the year and place that this occurred, it would be more or less worrisome if someone saw you do a handoff with a big bag of the devil's lettuce. Back in high school, my friends and I used to skateboard in a church parking lot. One day we're hanging out and this car comes tearing into the parking lot and drives over to a secluded corner. A lady gets out and goes to her trunk and pulls out a gun. We think she's about to delete herself, but then she notices us standing there. She paces back and forth a few times before getting back in the car and leaving. As soon as she left, we went across the street to a convenience store and called the police. I think this might be the first story where someone was like, I witnessed a crime, and then actually went on to call the police instead of burying it in the back of their mind and, posting on the internet. It might not be the kind of answer you're looking for. A teenage boy's hands, skin, and muscle essentially degloved. I was visiting my folks when the kids came up to the front door, knocked several times, and then promptly collapsed. He'd been riding a go-kart at full speed when the chain broke, wrapping itself around his wrist. The kid survived, but totally lost his hand, amputated. I was a little kid and I went looking for something in the house. Opened a closet in the basement that I usually never looked into and found a huge stack of Christmas presents. Walked over to them and saw they were all from Santa. What the actual heck? Why would Santa deliver presents 2 weeks early, and why would he leave them in the basement closet? Oh. I used to work on oil rigs, and one stormy night I had to go to the cellar deck, the lowest level of the rig, to do a repair, and I caught the safety officer and the production supervisor opening a separator valve and emptying the contents, oily water, straight into the sea. They obviously chose a wintry, stormy night to do this so that by morning the oil would be elsewhere. My wife and I vacationed to London a couple of years ago. After dinner, we decided to go out to try some of the local pubs because, London. We didn't want to go to the tourist trap places, so we followed around some locals. It was about 11 p.m. when we got to the last pub. It was a nice-looking place with a younger crowd. I really had to pee, but I couldn't find a restroom anywhere. I walked up to the guy working the front door and asked him where the restroom was. He looked at me kind of funny and said, "Upstairs, first door on your left." I thanked him and scurried back into the bar. The staircase was in the back left corner, blocked by a table. I found it odd. I had to ask the group sitting at the table to move to let me slide by. by. They thought it was strange too by the looks on their faces. You could tell that these stairs weren't meant to be used, but I had been drinking and my bladder was about to bust. As I reached the next floor, there's a long hallway with about 5 doors. The bouncer had told me it was the first door on the left, so I tried it. Nope, it was a dark room with empty kegs. Pretty normal, maybe he meant the right door. Nope, dark room with extra supplies. I started to wonder if I was too drunk to follow directions, but then I noticed I could see a light under the door at the end of the hallway. That must be the bathroom. Or so I thought. I opened the door to find a group of people in very sharp business attire seated around an oval table. They were clearly having a meeting of some sort with their laptops out. They were incredibly surprised to see me. They all froze in place and we all looked at each other for a good 15 to 30 seconds. Finally, one of the guys says, "What the hell are you doing here, mate?" I replied, "I'm just looking for the bathroom. The door guy told me it was up here." They all looked a little confused, but the guy responded, "We don't have a restroom in this building. Now please leave." I apologized and closed the door, then headed back down the staircase, confused as hell. The good news was that my urge to pee went away. I slid past the group at the table and returned to my wife, who had ordered some fish and chips, and told her all about what happened. We both agreed it was strange, but ordered another round and thought nothing of it. About 5 minutes later, I noticed the guy in the very nice looking suit come down the stairway. He saw me, then went to the security guy at the front and said something to him, then pointed at me. I almost pooped myself. The bouncer walks up to me and says, "You guys have to leave." I told him that I had not yet paid my tab and he said not to worry about it, just go ahead and leave. I obliged. My wife and I stand outside the bar while we wait for our Uber to take us back to our hotel. The bouncer is sitting there just staring at us. It was a very awkward 5-minute wait. When our Uber gets there, the bouncer says in a very Jamaican accent, "You'll have a very good night," followed by a very loud laugh. To this day, one of the weirdest events of my life. Why were they having a business meeting at 11 p.m. in a pub on a Saturday night? Why did the bouncer tell me to go upstairs when he knew there was no bathroom? Why did they kick us out afterwards? Why did the bouncer creepily laugh at us? We have no idea what happened, but we love to tell this story and see what everyone else's theories are. I can only assume English gangsters, or maybe, I don't know, shareholders in the property meeting for whatever reason. Like, that's a thing, I think. And I mean, Soto, why not? You own a pub. Why not just meet at 11 o'clock at night, drink to your heart's content while getting some goddamn work done? I was living in San Marcos, Texas in early 2003. My boyfriend at the time and I were heading home from a party around 2 or 3 a.m. when we get stopped at a train crossing and a super long train is going by. I mean, we sat there for a solid 15 minutes watching this train go by. Some of the cars had slats or cage walls, so you could see what was in the cars when they were backlit by the streetlights. We could clearly make out a large amount of military equipment was being moved down to the coast, or maybe an airfield. Within a month or so, it was publicly announced that the US was invading Iraq. Shared the house with my parents. Got a letter from ISP for illegal downloading. It was smut that involved multiple people. Had to tell my 70-year-old father that I knew and where he could find the free stuff online. A conversation I'm sure many of us never wish to have. Back in 2012-ish, I ran a food truck in Chicago. Chicago apparently let the Restaurant Association practically write the food truck ordinance. The ordinance stated that trucks could only be parked for a total of 2 hours at a time. We needed more time than that to make the sales we needed to be profitable. My boss had a few restaurants and the Restaurant Association wanted him as a member, so we got to sit in on a meeting and make our case about the parking time. During this meeting, they were having a discussion about how to kill the new minimum wage laws that were being discussed. It was like I was seeing the elite discuss how to keep the common people down, and it made me so incredibly angry. Doing retail PC repair, I found a massive folder of CP on a customer's laptop. Called the cops, state police, and FBI were there within 30 minutes. He ended up getting like 20 years. I was in a church in France once and it was pretty empty, very run down and had bullet holes in the walls, presumably from World War II. Anyways, on the right-hand side of the church, there was a wooden floorboard covered up by carpets. Curiosity got the better of my brother and he lifted it to find a passageway down to a tomb with skeletons and coffins without lids on them. I recently looked at the photos we took and it was truly creepy. My 65-year-old mother getting out of her wheelchair and walking around like it was nothing. She'd been wheelchair bound for 5 years at this point. I'd had my suspicions, but had talked myself out of them because that was ridiculous. Who would pretend to be wheelchair bound just for the attention? Sadly, when you are around long enough, you find that people are willing to do lots of things simply for attention. While looking for my birth certificate, I found a death certificate for a brother I never knew I had. This made me curious. I looked a little further and found family photos from my mom's previous marriage I was never told about, as well as her divorce records. She had a whole other family before ours and never told us, but I'll never bring it up to her because it's really none of my business. I opened the deep freezer and saw a severed German shepherd's head. I worked at a university animal research hospital. I knew better than to look in there. Worst fear confirmed. Also saw a window into the digestive system of a cow, and a dead horse lifted by forklift into a truck for disposal. I do kind of wish I could unsee all of that. It sounds like an unpleasant and kind of gruesome job, but it also sounds like an interesting one. Grew up with separated parents and my mother worked her butt off to provide us with a lifestyle we definitely didn't deserve. 60 plus hours every week while my siblings and I fought constantly, verbally and physically. One Christmas, we wanted a really expensive toy. Well, we went on a scavenger hunt to find it, and we did. As soon as we told her, she broke down in tears. I'll never forget the pure regret I felt in that moment. I felt like an absolute douchebag, and still do. One day, I'm going to provide for my mother with everything she deserves and more, and make sure she never has to lift a finger once she retires. Amen to that, brother. I also lived in a single household my whole life, and my mother is an absolute angel who has provided me with the best care that she can, and she deserves the world. The cream will rise to the top. Hope you enjoyed that bootleg Randy Savage. Rest in peace, Macho Man. What happened at the worst party you've ever been to? I went to a friend's graduation party after high school. I wasn't great friends with him, but I figured I would stop by with my girlfriend because he was nice enough to invite me. The party was so done up, tables full of food, streamers, confetti, all that junk, and my girlfriend and I were the only ones there. I felt awful. His parents clearly went all out to celebrate it, and it was so uncomfortable being one of 5 people there, including him and his parents. I felt awful for him. We stayed for hours out of pity and just kind of made small talk. Super depressing. We went to a friend's 40th birthday last year. She's burned some bridges lately and had an ugly divorce. My husband and I didn't want to go, but we felt like it would be good to show up. Same thing, lavishly decorated, amazing food, lots of drink. We were tastefully late and arrived to find her alone, weeping in the kitchen. There was no escape, even after she chastised us for being so late. So freaking sad. And all she wanted to talk about was that she was sure other folks would show up soon. Leaving was way more uncomfortable than staying, but by 1 a.m. it was clear no one else was coming. We were full and tipsy and walked home in a depressed silence. High school, late 80s, at an outside party with a bonfire to celebrate the end of the school year. Some numbnuts throws a glass bottle of beer into the fire, and about 20 minutes later that bottle explodes and shoots a stream of boiling beer all over a girl's crotch and legs. Ambulance was called. I believe she required several skin grafts over several months. I can still remember her shrill screaming and then her passing out. I had kind of a similar thing happen, but with far less of a horrible climax to it, where some guy who crashed a camping party that we were doing, lots of beer and all that stuff, threw a beer can on the fire. That beer can popped due to the heat and the gas releasing all of a sudden, and it landed on a friend's tent, burning their tent down, and they had to sleep with me the night. My brother was at a party once where there were more than a couple underage drinkers present. The house they were at had a thin driveway, so all the cars were packed into a bottleneck. The night wore on, and around 1 a.m, someone decided they wanted to go home. They found the girl who owned the car at the front of the bottleneck and asked her to move her car so she could get out. She said she couldn't because she had a breathalyzer installed in her car and it wouldn't start until someone sober blew into it. They went around the party and tried to find anyone who hasn't been drinking and couldn't find one. Another guy had the brilliant idea of asking the cool 20-something dude next door to do it. So an envoy of teens heads over to the house next door and asks the dude living there if he would please blow into a breathalyzer so they could leave. The dude takes a minute to look the group over, takes a drag of his cigarette and says, "You're gonna give me $25 for every person at the party or I'm calling the cops." He certainly has the makings of a savvy businessman. My sister's birthday was in the middle of the school holidays, and for her 7th birthday, she had a party that no one turned up to. Turns out our mother put the wrong day on the invite, so a lot of people had tried to come over the day before whilst we were out. This makes me feel very grateful that a large breadth of the guests, I suppose, I invite to parties usually show up. Some girl apparently had made out with a guy who wasn't her boyfriend before leaving. Someone at the party tells him via text, and a little while later someone is kicking down the door. door. He barges in, waving a gun around, screaming, "Which one of you douchebags made out with my girl?" People are ducking, scurrying away, and I'm just standing there thinking, if this is how I die, I'm going to be so mad. Host, who knew him, quickly pushed him out the door. Host just walks in and says, "Jerry, you're ruining another party? That's it. I don't care if you're armed and dangerous. Get the hell out of my house." My pal had a birthday sleepover. We were in 8th or 9th grade, I think. Street Fighter 2 had just came out for the SNES, so that was basically all we did. His parents had laid out some snacks and drinks on a party table, and there was one of these huge bags of party-sized Doritos there. We were playing Street Fighter when one of the guys grabbed a chip, bit into it, and yelled, "Oh, this chip is wet." He began investigating the bag, and we quickly discovered all the chips were wet. The birthday boy's 5-year-old brother had taken advantage of our Street Fighter distraction and licked all of the Dorito dust from every chip and placed them back in the bag. We found him playing in his room, his face covered in the implicating dust. This reminds me of a significantly less disgusting prank I wanted to pull on my brother, where I took all the soft chocolate-filled bits from a box of Cocoa Pops Rocks, if anyone remembers that cereal. Months go by. Turned out he didn't really eat cereal anymore, so I had to eat this whole bowl of, the hard bits in Cocoa Pops Rocks. And I was like, well, damn, that was a waste of time. And I also remember one time my brother tried to give me a sandwich, a jam sandwich, which as a little boy was my favorite, but I had so little trust in him. I was like, "What did you do to it?" "Nothing." And I looked in it. I just immediately examined the sandwich, opened it up, and there was just a pair of sardines in it. Went to a bachelor party at a house someone rented with a buddy. We got there late, so everyone was pretty lit by the time we got there, especially the bachelor. Now, he had hired like 4 entertainers of a certain variety for the party to walk around and dance for everybody, but at one point, the entertainers took the bachelor to the middle of the room, and they were going to do a dance just for him. Again, by this time, the dude is gone, but he managed to stumble into a chair in the middle of the room. The entertainers set up this kiddie pool in front of him, and a couple of them were going to wrestle each other, covered in baby oil. While they were oiling each other up in the middle of the room, one of the other entertainers starts to dance for the guy, and, well, she made it past like one verse of "Pour Some Sugar on Me" when homie just threw up everywhere. I mean, this was like someone turned on a fire hose of vomit. Of course, he just drenched the poor girl that was dancing for him, which made her freak out and run away towards the kiddie pool, which, may I remind you, now has 2 oiled up entertainers. And this lady, covered in vomit, slips, takes the other girls down with her, and she throws up all over them. At this point, there's 3 entertainers flailing around like fish out of water, trying desperately to get out of a kiddie pool covered in baby oil and vomit, slipping and falling over each other while the bachelor is just passed the hell out, covered in vomit, drooling on himself in a chair in the middle of the room. And just to add to this, I guess the entertainers bring a guy with them for protection or whatever, and he is losing his crap. He's trying to get the girls out of the pool, getting all sorts of nasty stuff on himself, slipping around while just repeating, "What the hell?" over and over. Good times. For some more than others, surely. White racist redneck guy took off his shirt to reveal prison swastika tattoos, also pulled out a gun saying he would go commit hate crimes. He began waving the gun around, getting upset. He was already super wasted. I left the room and just about left the party, but the guy who owned the house made him put his gun out in his car. Fast forward a couple hours, we were playing beer pong. Drunk racist swastika dude was playing on a team with his wife. Me and my best friend were his opponents. He was too drunk to hit anything, and his sober wife sucked. So he used distraction tactics. He took out his pecker and flopped it into the cups. His pecker was freaking huge. After a while, that stopped phasing us, so he decided to take his 20-year-old wife's clothes off. He stripped her naked while she was sober, the only girl at the party, in front of like 20 other drunk dudes. She did not look comfortable, but also, for whatever reason, didn't stop him. After a while, once that wore off, he ordered her to go to our side of the table and flirt with us while she was naked. That's when I left. Next time I saw him was after my friend's death. Drunk racist dude had given my buddy a bunch of pills, and my buddy, like an idiot, took them. Started feeling weird, drove home, and died when his heart blew up. Nobody found him for 3 days. Drunk racist dude showed up at my work, crying because he hadn't been invited to the funeral, because he had essentially killed him. He was upset that nobody seemed to care about him and that even his wife had left him. Thank Christ. I don't know why he thought I would care, but he said I was the only one he could talk to. I had only met him twice before this. It was awkward, and I told him he'd be okay. He just needed to figure some stuff out. I was pretty honest with him about all the crap that he had done, which was stupid. He agreed. I bought him a pack of cigarettes, I worked at a gas station at the time, and he rode off on his motorcycle. Never heard from him again after that. No idea what happened. I'm curious about what other company this person keeps to even be in the vicinity of this individual. Like, I'm all for having a diverse, rich group of friends from all walks of life, whether they be liberal, conservative, religious, non-religious, but at a certain point, you gotta look at someone and go like, I don't even want to be in the same vicinity as you. Somebody brought their baby. Keep in mind, we were all 17, so it was like, what the hell? My 9th birthday party, I invited the entire class as well as my only friends. They went to another school. The only person that showed up was my grandpa. Over 10 years ago, my employees got together to throw me a going-away party. It was held at a local bar that had closed to the public, just for the party, so of course I'm feeling really special. There was a kid there, around 19 years old, who was a really good guy but generally attracted trouble. I used to talk to him all the time, and any time I sensed that he was about to step and do something stupid, I used to always say, you know, the worst gift a kid can give his mother, a dead son. There's a long story behind that, but it just somehow became a thing I always said to him. Anyway, I gave a quick speech and started to duck out just as things were livening up so everybody could have their fun while I returned to my wife and our newborn. I bumped into that kid on the way out, talked to him a bit, and of course the dead son line was the last thing I said before I left. Actually, I said, you know, the worst gift, and he answered, a dead son, gave me a hug, and that was it. Pretty obvious how this story ends. Got the call a few hours later telling me he'd been killed in a car wreck. Turns out that he was trying to do good. Hadn't drank a drop, no drugs or anything. He just got into the wrong car and let a drunk idiot drive him home. There were about 4 kids in the car, and he was the only one that didn't walk away. Sad. A friend told me about this corporate party held for the clients he was at. Open bar, but pretty dull, with people being on their best behavior to schmooze and make the clients feel important. It was open bar in the sense that employees were understood to hold it together. One very, very low on the totem pole employee got hammered drunk with one of their biggest clients and proceeded to get to 3rd or 4th base in the pool for like half an hour. He was fired the following Monday. Probably worth it to him as he was making minimum wage. My wife was on her way up to the north of England to be a bridesmaid for her friend who she has known since they were young. Her friend has learning disabilities, but seems happy with her husband-to-be. On the morning of the wedding, the groom was arrested for bad-touching young children. He was apparently a known pedophile. The bride's family went ahead with the wedding reception anyway. If they actually knew, that is utterly insane to me. An old friend of mine who unfortunately is no longer with us used to throw house parties all the time in high school. It would usually be 15 to 30 people getting wasted and doing illegal substances. This one particular time he hosted a massive high school party because his parents weren't home, so he had probably between 80 to 90 of us teenagers at his house partying like crazy and using every illegal substance that we could get our hands on. About an hour and a half goes by and people are messed up and having a blast. I was toasty. My buddy who hosted the party filled up capsules with illegal high and he was swallowing those all night. So like I said, an hour and a half goes by and someone asks him where his parents went on vacation. His response? They're not on vacation. They went out to watch a movie. Just then is when the car rolls up and suddenly a bunch of drunken stone punks pour out of every orifice of the house to the closest park. Every single person in that house took off. Everyone, even the guy who hosted the party. I don't know if he was worried his parents would kill him, or maybe he was so messed up he just forgot that he was at his own house. Man, I missed that guy. I was in high school and a classmate was moving, and his family had already gone to the new house. The old house was going to be torn down and was vacant, so he threw a break my stuff party. People showed up with baseball bats, all kinds of stuff, and I felt underdressed with an axe handle. Alcohol was involved. I was greeted at the door by a guy with a 6-shooter in his waistband holding a chainsaw. The event only went downhill from there. I was 16 and now, many years later, I'm a dad. It makes me cringe very hard that my offspring would never attend an event like that. Not gonna lie, that sounds pretty fun. But I'd probably be like bringing stuff or I'd be like, is this okay to break? Is this okay to break? And it's like, everything's okay to break. I'd be self-conscious about it. I went to the beach for a friend's birthday party. After the sun went down, we drove back to her house, about 30 minutes away, to continue the party. When we got home, her dog was dead. Because she lived in a rural area, the other guys and I had to dig a hole and bury it so the coyotes wouldn't consume the carcass. Burying a dead dog is the weirdest thing I've ever done at a birthday party. Good Lord, I can only imagine just how devastated that girl would have been. I'd be heartbroken if I came home for a party and my dog was dead. That'd just be party's cancelled. Maybe sit around and feel bad and play Mario Kart for a bit, but I'd probably be losing with all the tears in my eyes. Halloween 2007, random friend of devil's lettuce dealer having a party at the house across the street from the religious college APU. Those kids party hard. Best buddy and I made Roman armor with sheet metal by hand. We were definitely proud and looked kinda cool, I must say. Anyway, we show up to this party and there are maybe 20 people. The house is really small, dude whose place it is like extremely stoked on our costumes, makes us feel really welcome, which is nice at a stranger's party. He asks us if we can guard the keg and says we can drink all we want from it. We agree, of course. He has the keg in the laundry room, which is small. We chill and drink lots and meet lots of cool people getting beers. Hour rolls by and we realize that the party has gotten huge. 2 new kegs delivered, well over 150 people. The house is so full it's scary. We are still at the keg and the bathroom is far away. My buddy is wasted and decides to pee into the washer. No regrets on his part. I try to make my way through the crowd, which is utterly impossible. My hand-cut sheet metal armor is poking and slicing people the more I push. Bad idea. People start screaming and laughing. Suddenly, some girl had to poop so bad that she just popped down in the crowd and let loose. The cops are also breaking up the party. House smells horrible. Friend and I are the last ones out. Poop smeared all over the floor, trampled and painted everywhere. Cops are dying laughing at the situation. I puke outside soon as we exit, like gallons of beer puke. Cops compliment my costume while crying, laughing. That was the highlight of the night, and that chick must not have pooped for days. This entire topic is reminding me of why I simultaneously miss and don't miss wild parties. I was at a trashy shotgun wedding reception and slipped off to take a whiz in the bushes. When I came back, there were 2 blonde strippers dressed as cops arresting the groom. I said, "Who the hell rents strippers for a wedding?" Really loud right as the music cut out. They were not strippers. Went to an isolated cottage in the woods up north that my friend's rich family owned. There was about 15 of us. Everyone except for me imbibed in some illegal substances. I don't do that stuff, really, but have no problem with them if they want to. I was getting drunk and had enough fun with that. Everything was going great until one guy started to have a really bad trip. Me and the guy who owned the cottage were the ones taking care of him because I was the most sober and he felt responsible for his parents' cabin. It turned really scary really fast. I pretty much carried him up the stairs into a room before someone else noticed and got a friend to come help me. We'd turn on the light and he'd start screaming that it was too bright. We'd turn off the light. He'd scream that it was too dark. He kept complaining that he had to use the bathroom, but wouldn't get up when we urged him to. My friend told me to fetch a different friend who said that he was not in the state of mind to deal with it and refused. Another friend told me that she knows him better than anyone else, so she should go talk to him. I tried to stop her, but she dashed past me and ran upstairs into the room and came out crying because he'd punched her in the face and then wet himself and peed all over her. We didn't know what to do. We just kind of left him in the room and went downstairs while all that was heard from upstairs was screaming and banging. We sat around in a circle and debated whether or not we should call an ambulance. Everyone ultimately decided against it because they didn't want to be fined for having illegal substances. The noises eventually stopped and we all went to bed. The next day, we found out that our friend had felt like he was trapped in his own skin and was trying to claw, bite, and rip it off. He was covered in bite marks and scratches. Everyone treated him like a monster and avoided him the next day, which made me really angry because it could have just as easily happened to any of them. That sounds like one major bummer of a night, and I sympathize in the disappointment with the other friends. Like, damn, to treat him so callously after, having a bad trip and whatnot. Hopefully that didn't just, put a wedge between that guy and the rest of the friendship group, because, God, that'd be sad. College party. Pre-drank with my buddies and their roommate Ryan. Ryan gets drunk, high, super confidence, and starts teaching us how to not take any guff from no one. We're walking to the party and with zero context, he's preaching shoulders back, stand up straight, get right up in the guy's face. No idea why he feels the need to be such a tough guy. Within 5 minutes of being at the party, another guy puts Ryan in a headlock and blasts him in the face a quick 5 or so times. Blood everywhere, hosts freaking out. It turns out they were arguing about about how good a mutual friend was at water skiing. Am I the only one confused about how that would lead to such violence? The only thing I can say that's resulted of this is that now I am more interested in how good this person is at water skiing and whose opinion was whose. Kid hosting the party didn't plan on dad coming home. Dad showed up, freaked out, cuts off his kid's finger with a decorative sword. Party ended. Kid went to the hospital to have his fingers reattached and showed back up at the house we moved the party to with a giant cast on. No, the dad didn't get in trouble. The kid was probably 19 or 20 and must have not told the hospital what had happened. Also, he cut them off closer to the tip, not the entire finger. I'm guessing they just sewed them back on. I don't think it required actual surgery. It happened relatively early in the evening and he didn't show back up at the next house until hours later. It was probably close to sunrise. It wasn't really a party at the next house. It was more like half the people from the sword house sitting around drinking and talking about how messed up the night was. That would certainly be a night to remember for just about everyone involved, I must say. It's hilarious, but also tragic. I'm mixed on this. It was the first party I ever went to, and the worst party I ever went to. It was all going great until this dude, drunk, caught his girlfriend making out with his friend and threw a freaking TV at him. Then he just went absolutely ape crazy and started screaming at him in the GF. I, like the others, stood in shock and slowly proceeded to finish my Pepsi and then get the hell out. After I left, my friend said, "Waste of a perfectly good TV." I was pledging to a fraternity and we had a crazy party. Towards the end, there were passed out people all over and a few brothers and myself who were still awake at 3 a.m. trying to kick strangers out. The last group was this passed out girl and her friend sitting on our couch on the first floor, and after much prodding and poking, the passed out chick begins to stir and moan, then proceeds to drunkenly sit up and mumble, "I need to pee." She stands up all wobbly, then suddenly takes off her pants. Her friend has a shocked face, knowing what's about to happen. Brother Joe has a huge grin on his face, and I'm like, what the hell? The drunk chick squats and begins to pee all over our tiles. It was hilarious, and when she's done, her embarrassed friend grabs her and quickly leaves. We're all laughing our butts off when suddenly Joe abruptly stops laughing and yells to me, "Pledge, grab 'em up and clean this up." What's something you found out about your significant other years into the relationship that made you reevaluate the whole thing? 9 months into the relationship, I found out he had a court date. He told me it was for assaulting a bouncer. Very soon after, his mother admitted that he had a court date for assaulting his underage relative. When I confronted him about this, he said that the underage girl raped him. When I told him he was full of crap, he went on to admit that she did something for him that I will not say. Soon after, I went into his lawyer's office with him and read the transcript. It turns out he had raped his underage niece twice and just tells a different lie to anyone who asks him why he's in jail. Total piece of crap. I ran very fast, haven't seen him since, and I hope I will never see him again. About 1 year in, he told me he was about to get full custody of his son. I didn't know he had a son. About a year in, I found out she lied to me about getting an STD test. Turned out she had more than one STD, which somehow I tested clean for. There is actually a reason for that. Some STDs have an easier time transmitting from men to women than from women to men. When I had my first child, the pregnancy wasn't a surprise or an accident. We talked and planned. He got a little overbearing during the pregnancy, like insisting on breastfeeding without even discussing it with me. I put it down to new dad nerves and not knowing any better. Turns out that was only the tip of the iceberg. He believed that children were completely and totally a wife's responsibility. He wouldn't change a diaper. He wouldn't pick up the baby when it cried. No way would he get up in the middle of the night. He expected me to work a full-time job plus do all of the childcare. At that point, I was confused and appalled, but I told myself he just needed time to adjust. I realized how delusional I was when the baby got sick while he was on a fishing trip. The doctors thought the baby had meningitis, so not just sick, but life-threatening sick. I called and asked him to come home. He refused. He'd paid for 2 more days of fishing, and he didn't want to lose the money. She would lie about tiny, inconsequential things, made me question my own perception of truth and self-instinct. Eventually caught her in a lie, and she denied even when presented with full proof. It wasn't something huge, but it was something that opened my eyes a little. My friend swears I was being gaslit. Out of nowhere, a year into being married, he said he wants to join the Marine Corps. He also wanted me to drop out of law school, birth babies, take care of his mother, and run a household, all while he's deployed. Hard pass. Found his hidden folder on his phone, blackmailed girls for nudes, stole nudes from girls, pretended to be someone else and sexted his sister without her knowing it was him. Constantly made me feel like I was crazy or overreacting. Also realized what him calling me a manic pixie dream girl meant. I'm hardly a perfect specimen of a human being. I would like to believe that I have a respectable amount of moral fiber, but boy, do y'all know how to pick 'em. 7 years in, after having been married a year, my husband finally confessed to me that he was raped as a child for 6 years by his older brother. It really threw the struggles of our SX life into perspective. Now knowing this, I have done all kinds of research, found how to support rape victims, info, and I've changed how I behave when we're intimate. We're working on it. I tell him every time we're intimate that it's an act of love and he's safe with me, and we have our safe word for general use if he's feeling overwhelmed. We're really making progress. I think things are better now. He's starting to understand that it's love in our marriage, and I want him to want me, and I want him to be a little controlling when he feels up to it. He's grown a lot, he's a very strong person, and I'm immeasurably lucky to have him. That is a lot of trauma and baggage to take on, but with the right person and a whole lot of love, I think you'll get through it. I realized he would always blame me for his angry outbursts and mistakes. He punched a wall and screamed about a homework assignment he didn't understand because I was sitting on the couch quietly. Then after he was finished blaming me and realized I was upset, he became all sad and wanted me to comfort him. What a pathetic human being. I'm glad I've grown past accepting that sort of behavior. That my husband wanted to start fires and kill police officers and was planning on framing me for it so his girlfriend could move in while I did his time in prison for him. We were driving home from a dinner in which we drove separately to, and without knowing it, she cut me off by merging into my lane last minute without using a blinker. I was annoyed at first, but when I recognized it was her car, it made me feel very strange. I think that makes sense. Knowing that your significant other might be really reckless on the road is worrying, concerning, very concerning, especially if you plan to have kids. That she cheated on me and that she lied about being psychologically abused by her father. She lied about being financially responsible and was formulating a plan to murder me. Today, my girlfriend told me that every time we argue, she wants to stab me. Now, she might not mean it, but that is certainly a red flag. That she had been in contact with her exes, met them, and regularly cheated on me with just whomever. 8 years, she was really good at hiding her tracks. I only found out because I contracted an STD, curable fortunately, from her. I was really glad we didn't have kids and divorced her, moved away and drank too much. Then I met the most awesome person in the world, who I married, had kids, and didn't know relationships could be this good. Turned out my husband, who was sober from illegal substances and alcohol, had been using booger sugar monthly for the last 15 years, just enough to maintain apparently. We have worked it out, but I was almost gone at that point. He hid a few addictions and withdrawals from me. I forgave him. He stole $4,000 from our joint savings that only I contributed to. I forgave him. He sexted and was trying to meet up with randos, which made me realize I should probably leave. But the thing that made me certain was when I realized he didn't actually want an equal relationship. He expected me to shop, cook, clean, and be responsible for him for the rest of our lives. He pretended to want what I wanted for years, and I was dumb enough to believe his excuses on why he just couldn't do it yet. I demand and I deserve a reasonable equal relationship. Divorce was one of the best things I ever did. That she wants to have fights and be mad. For example, we currently haven't spoken for 3 days and she's sleeping in the other room because I accidentally texted "good night, sleep tight" instead of just "good night" because I was the one going to bed, not her. So in her mind, that text must have been meant for another woman. We live together, we work together, we share a car. How on God's green earth could I have a side chick? She told me when we first met that she was broken as she suffers from depression. I didn't brush it off, so to speak, but just kind of thought, yeah, whatever, it won't be that bad. It's not because I don't think depression isn't serious, but I just had never even really been in contact with someone with depression, so I kind of had no idea what it entails. Hopefully that makes sense. 5.5 years of being together later, and holy cow, damn, depression is just super serious. I've been in situations and scenarios I never imagined being in because of her and her depression. She's phoned me up twice while she was working in London. I live 60 miles away in Kent, saying she loves me and she's sorry and she's going to end it. What the hell do I do? I didn't know what to frickin' do. Thankfully, both of those times she never went ahead with it, but still ended up in hospital, and obviously I went up to her. Sometimes she's just crying and crying and crying and crying. Countless visits to the GP for talks and medication. Again, things I've never dealt with before, and at first I was extremely uncomfortable about it all. This isn't for me kind of stuff. But the good news is it and she are part of my life now. I don't mind all of the above anymore. She loves me and I love her. What's even more amazing is that I'm the one that keeps her going, she says. This is life, and I'm now fully aware of the seriousness of depression. She recently got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Made me look back and realize a lot of her actions and anger stemmed from that. She just started mood stabilizers and has found a great therapist to help her work through everything. But it would have almost been a deal breaker if she didn't try to actively manage it. She lied to me, or rather flat out denied, telling me that she has herpes. Guess who has herpes now? Her reasoning? I thought you wouldn't talk to me if you found out I had it. I would have kept talking to her, but perhaps I would have wrapped it up first before, doing the deed so soon. Just frickin' disclose that information at the start. Don't be a butt who gives someone an STD knowingly. Yeah, that is definitely just completely and utterly unacceptable. 7 years in, I found out he was a high school dropout without even a GED. He had initially told me he was a game design major, turned down a job opportunity or internship, I can't recall which, with EA Toronto because he didn't want to leave me. I literally told him, go, we can figure other crap out later. This won't wait. I should have known then. Ugh, love is blind, but only for so long. Turns out when she said she wanted to get married, she actually meant that she just wanted to get married, by which I mean wanting to get married is not the same thing as wanting to marry me. I just happened to be the guy that she was with at the time when her friends were getting married, and it was making her jealous, and her mother was also putting pressure on her to get married. It happens to a lot more people than you think. After several years together, my ex told me nonchalantly one evening that he stole $500 from one of his best friends because he really needed it. This ex was a college-educated person trying to get into dental, medical, or pharmacy school. Not only was there no reason for this person to steal their friend's money, I didn't understand how someone could do that and feel no remorse whatsoever, especially to someone they considered a good friend. It was at that moment that I seriously began to believe I had given my trust and love to a total sociopath. It was the catalyst that pushed me out of the relationship. I found out later that while I was working on a degree in another city, he found dates on Tinder, spinning lies about being in med school and owning a luxury condo overlooking the Wisconsin state capitol. He'd take girls for rides on my motorcycle and bring them back to the condo I owned. I don't know who or how many, but a neighbor specifically went out of their way to tell me what was going on. One of his Tinder dates was with a good friend's best friend, and I heard through her the lies about being rich and working in medicine. A high school classmate of his texted me to warn me the same thing. He hit on a girl at a reunion by saying he was in med school at Wisconsin, but the girl was actually in med school at Wisconsin, and she promptly told everyone about the exchange. When I went to kick him out of the condo, he told me that his mother had turned into a raging alcoholic and that kicking him out would mean he couldn't take care of her anymore. He stole a whole bunch of stuff from me, some of which he still has, and after all of it, he had the gall to text and ask if he could manage my finances for me at his new job in, believe it or not, wealth management. I guarantee you he's stealing from every one of his clients. But when he said he stole from his friend, it really changed my opinion that he wasn't just an insecure millennial trying to find his way between college and the real world. He's a class A raging narcissist, and holy crap, am I glad he's out of my life forever. A little over a year after being officially together, I finally put together that they had the cancer gene in their family. Despite being crazy in love with her, this made me want to back out because I totally saw a future with her. Her grandpa and dad both had head and neck cancers, 2 aunts and 1 uncle were survivors of ovarian and lung cancer. I knew I wanted kids and she did too, so there was always this looming fear that our future kids might get it. Still went through because she mattered more to me than all my fears combined. Life plays a cruel joke, and despite having no vices and being an occasional drinker, she got the big C as well. Head and neck, just like Grandpa and her dad. Lost her a little over a year ago. Still no regrets. Still love her a lot. Damn. My wife and I married quickly without getting to know each other much. She was raised in a Mormon home and I had converted to Mormonism at 18. We played the roles of provider and nurturer in our marriage according to the teachings of the faith. I left the faith about 6 years ago. She stopped attending about 2 to 3 years ago. The very difficult conversation when I left made us talk about things more than we ever had before. We dove deeply into so many aspects of our life, marriage, and desires for the future. I realized after years of marriage that she was actually an incredibly smart, dynamic woman. I loved her a lot before this. I always thought she was amazing, but because of the dynamics of each of our upbringings and the dynamic of the faith, I never realized how intelligent she was. I ask her opinions on things all the time now. We left our faith, ditched most of our baggage from our sexist upbringings, and I realized how great of a lifelong companion I have, and I am ecstatic about this. That he had been cheating on me and racking up debt. We had gotten married and made life plans that he had always known would never come to fruition because of what he was doing behind closed doors. Yet he allowed me to marry him anyway, knowing I was signing up for a life I did not want and that we did not agree on. I would have been the one to bear the brunt of the consequences for his actions. Well, I'm glad you got out of there. He told me from the very get-go that he was diagnosed with Asperger's in grade school, but I just brushed it off because I know many people who half-heartedly claim to be autistic. But a couple weeks ago, I was lying in bed while he was putting away one of his 50 pocket watches in his holding box that he keeps in pristine condition tucked away in his sock drawer. Then he proceeded to pick out a new axe to carry in his backpack full of supplies, and for some reason, it just hit me for the first true time that he is totally 100% on the spectrum. And it made me think back to the times when he has done things that absolutely infuriate me, and he has no idea he had done something wrong. And suddenly, I could see that he wasn't being manipulative or underhanded. His brain simply works in a different way than mine, and he even tried to warn me of this. I just, for some reason, chose to disregard the information. He is super willing to meet me halfway, even when he doesn't understand why something bothers me. He acknowledges how I feel, and he stops doing it. He is the goofiest, most eccentric ball of love I have ever met, and coming to terms with his autism has made me love him all that much more. Men! I don't know who needs to hear this, but there's still hope! He was always very secretive and a little paranoid. One example, I learned about 15 years into the relationship that his birthday is not in May like he said, but in November. When he moved to the US from England in the 1970s, they had written it down incorrectly in his passport, and he never changed it to his correct birth date. I still don't know why. Every flat and clean surface can and will become a closet space. It was my girlfriend of 2 years last night in town before leaving for college. She told me she was hanging out with her friends, which I was fine with, as we had planned to see each other every weekend. Turns out she didn't see her friends. She hung out with her ex-boyfriend and then left for school the next day and didn't answer her phone for a week. First time I talked to her after she left, she told me what she did and broke up with me. See, this kind of thing is why people have trust issues. That and much, much, much worse things. Things that have already been covered in this video even. There's a ton of things I discovered over the years we were together, but the biggest one was how he had lied about his exes. He talked terribly about them and would make them all sound like cheaters and liars or just plain psychopathic. It turns out that's not the truth at all. They were none of those things, and I found out the hard way that it was him that embodied those qualities all along. We have broken up and gotten back together many times over the past 6 years, but it ended for the last time this weekend. Good for you. She is perfectly okay flipping out on the kids. I mean, full on cussing them out and yelling about stuff. I ultimately confronted her about it, and she said, "So everyone else is allowed to express themselves when they're upset, but not me." We had to have a long talk after that one, as would be expected. Her walls were just too high to ever get through. Intimacy, affection, emotion, romance, all gone, and she was unwilling to change. As can be the case with some to many people for a myriad of reasons, and it can be quite sad. I was just out of high school and was dating a girl. We were fairly serious but young. We went to Subway for lunch, and she was super rude to the poor girl working behind the counter, and after we left, she was saying how stupid she was. Couldn't even make the sandwich right. I started to notice she was rude to lots of service and retail workers. I saw her in a much different light after that. We didn't last very long. I think there's a saying where it goes something like, if someone's nice to you but not to the waiter, then they're probably not really a nice person. We are Texans. He likes beans in his chili, but I've decided I can make it work. 3 years into a 5-year relationship, my now ex-girlfriend finally told me she had a bad eating disorder after I overheard her throwing up after a meal. It was something I suspected in the past and questioned her on, but she was adamant with her denials. This was not the end. In fact, it was really just planting a seed of doubt. 2 years from this point, we were still together, and I was still trying to support her through treatment of her disorder. Eventually, more of her secrets start to come out: secretive alcoholism, childhood abuse, cheating. Even with all the secrets and lies, it was not easy to cut ties, but it was needed in order to keep my own sanity. My wife and I have very little boundaries. Oftentimes, while we're having a conversation in our room, one of us needs to use the bathroom. We'll just follow each other in the bathroom and continue talking. If the conversation is good enough, poop won't hinder our dialogue. However, there are times when my wife is in the bathroom and locks the door. I always thought it was weird, but it didn't bother me. We've been married for 9 years now. We met at 15 and are now 28. We've grown up together, graduated together, traveled together. We know each other so well and have nothing to hide from one another. Or so I thought. This all changed one day. I was feeding our kids lunch and she was in the bathroom. Unbeknownst to her, she did not lock the door. When I walked in on her, I witnessed something that I never thought I would see. Something that lived in the back of my head, but I didn't think it could be real. My wife of 13 years relationship, 9 years of marriage, 3 kids together, was shaving her upper lip. She is Puerto Rican and has a little peach fuzz that you can't even really notice, and she was shaving it like it was a full-on mustache. She looked at me with this embarrassed look, and I thought to myself, what else is she hiding? I don't know that I'll ever look at her the same again. That one was really cute. I like the tongue-in-cheek nature of it. She would ignore my opinion about anything. It started small, like forcing me to watch movies I didn't like with her. After that, she made dinner with food I disliked, then go to theme parks even though I told her I didn't want to go in a roller coaster. Over the years, it escalated to her saying we wanted at least 3 children. I've never wanted kids, and she knew that. I started to notice I didn't want to spend time with her anymore. It was exhausting, so bye. We were together for 4 years before she told me she was obsessed with Star Wars. Like, what the hell? That's day one stuff. We could have been going to midnight shows and dressing up. Oh, the squandered time. One of you could have been Chewbacca and the other could be Han Solo. I didn't have much to do with my significant other, now ex's parents, for the first few years. This changed after we were married, and I discovered that she was basically a psychological carbon copy of her father and I, her mother. Only problem with that was her father was a domineering man who wore his wife down over many years to the point that she was basically mute and offered no resistance to him. What he wanted, he got. My ex was already showing a tendency to bully me into supplication, and I realized I was heading down the same path as her mother. I had already started giving up trying to argue about anything with her. I saw my future quite clearly one day and left. To come to that realization, like, the back and forth and look in the mirror, that must be terrifying. Well, one day I was having a really crappy day at work. Headache, annoyed at my coworkers, etc., and was moaning about it to him. Then he shows up unannounced with Advil and my favorite coconut water, which was really freaking sweet and made my day good again. But then, when I get home, this dude had a new PS4 controller waiting for me, with takeout from my favorite Mexican restaurant. So yeah, reevaluated a whole bunch, and now I'm saving up for a ring. What are some psychological experiments with interesting results? White rats and black rats were raised separately without seeing each other. When a black rat was placed in the white rat's cage, the other rats ostracized him. When white rats and black rats are raised together and a new black rat is placed in a cage, the white rats accept him. So basically, rats are racist unless raised to accept differences. The self-fulfilling prophecy studies are very important to social psychology, and their findings have many real-world applications. Basically, they brought together a group of kids and formed a class with a real teacher. They gave the kids a test for overall academic skill at the start of the course, but didn't really use the scores. Instead, they told the teachers that a few students picked at random were very brilliant and scored very highly. They then observed the class for a long period of time and noticed that the teachers gave the kids they thought were brilliant much more attention. At the end of the study, the kids took the test again, and they found that the kids who were randomly named brilliant at the start actually scored higher than the rest of the class. The kids, again, at the start didn't score any different from the rest of the class, but through the self-fulfilling prophecy, they became the best in their class. This obviously has tons of applications in the real world and especially education. The monster experiment. Although it is horrible how they left the children with mental health issues at the end, the experiment gave very good insight to how to parent a child. In this experiment, they took groups of orphan children and separated them into 3 groups. One was the control, the second were told they had a lisp and were doing bad, and the third was told that their speech was perfect. As the experiment went on, Group 2 began developing lisps after being berated constantly. They became shy and reserved. They were scared to speak because they didn't want to get in trouble because of their poor speaking skills. Group 3, however, had the opposite happen. They spoke better, they were more willing to improve, they were encouraged to keep speaking and told that their speech was amazing and perfect. By the end of the experiment, they had one group with no change, one group with now mentally ill children with a speech impediment, and one group with great speaking skills. It truly shows that encouraging children is the way to go, and that verbal abuse can be just as, if not more, harmful as physical abuse. All things in moderation, as they say. I think any excessive amount of abuse or even nurturing and confirmation or whatever can be bad for anyone growing up. Because on one hand, you get people who grow up into quivering leaves of human beings, and that's unfortunate, but you can grow out of that. And then you have people who just become egotistical or maybe struggle to accept objective facts and maybe don't like it when people disagree with their more subjective opinions. The Monopoly Study by Paul Piff. He basically brought 2 strangers into the lab together and had them play a game of Monopoly together. He randomly assigned one participant to start the game with twice as much money than the other, and that participant also got to roll both dice to get around the board, i.e., the other participant started with half the money and could only roll 1 dice. At the end of the game, when he asked the participant who started with more money why he won the game, they would chalk it up to their excellent strategy and gamesmanship, rather than the fact that they had started the game with way more resources. It says a lot about how we deal with being born into a privileged state. I am skeptical as to whether or not you can actually equate real life and a game of Monopoly together, and whether or not people would be that blind to their advantages. Not entirely sure if it fits into the category, but the Rosenhan experiment, 13 people feigned mental illness to get into mental hospitals, and all were admitted with different diagnoses. They then assumed their normal personalities, but to be released, they all had to admit that they were mentally ill. There was a second part where a hospital challenged Rosenhan to send multiple fake patients to the hospital, and they would rate their patients on a scale of whether they think they were faking. They identified many possible fakers, but Rosenhan, in fact, hadn't sent anyone. The 3 Christs of Ypsilanti. A psychologist forces 3 people who believe that they are Jesus Christ to live together. It does not go well. The psychologist in question, Milton Rokeach, had heard of a case where 2 men who believed that they were Mary, Mother of Christ, were forced to live together, and one of them broke free from their delusion. So he figured 3 Christs. What would happen? They were angry at each other, often had physical fights. They eventually started getting along by avoiding the topic. He would ask them about the others, and each would say that the others were crazy. That they, of course, were the real Jesus. No cures, some unethical stuff, but interesting. I'm a huge fan of Milgram's Small World experiment. It is more sociology than psychology, but I still think it's really cool. Milgram sends out 160 letters containing the name and address of a stockbroker in Boston to people in Omaha, Nebraska. They had to send it to someone they thought would get the letter closer, but they couldn't mail it directly to the stockbroker. Interestingly, most people that sent on the letter sent it onto the same group of people on the 5th degree. It only took 6 people, hence the 6 degrees of separation, to arrive on average. It shows how interconnected our world is, even before the internet, which is happy to think about. That is kind of nice to think about. If you stare into a dimly lit mirror for 10 plus minutes, you start to see hallucinations. What individuals see tends to vary, but they've used this as a test to simulate schizophrenia before, because some see monsters, deformities, or general weird stuff. I did a variation of it for a friend in uni and completely wimped out of it after my face started not looking like my face anymore. I had a complete disassociation. I stopped looking and just waited out the time. I loved learning about infant development. My favorite was probably the development of depth perception, or perhaps the fear of heights. We're not born with it, but if I recall correctly, we develop it within the first year or so. Scientists created a raised square platform. Half of the floor was wood and the other half glass. The actual surface of the floor, 1 meter or so below, was white with red polka dots. At varying intervals of age, the babies would be brought in and placed on the wood and encouraged to crawl to their moms, who is standing at the glass end of the platform. In early infancy, babies crawl over there without giving a crap. At some point, though, they stop at the point where the wood meets the glass, or plexiglass, maybe, showing that they recognize the difference in height and the fear of falling. Babies' brains are pretty frickin' cool. It is definitely interesting to watch something that has low intelligence or self-awareness slowly gain more of it over time. You know, it's the process of how having a kid and everything is interesting. Reconsolidation. When you retrieve a memory from your long-term memory, it is susceptible to being manipulated. This can lead to memories being totally changed from the source. This is why eyewitness accounts cannot be fully seen as true. This knowledge is also being used to help people with PTSD by changing the negative memories they have of their particular trauma. The influence of the color red in sports. Judges were shown a video of a Taekwondo match and awarded more points to the red competitor versus the blue competitor. When the colors were digitally reversed, judges awarded more points to the other, now red competitor. Red may be a signal of dominance, as reddened skin is associated with higher testosterone or possibly higher fertility in women. Wearing red may induce intrinsic psychological effects which increase dominance in addition to altering the perception of others. Researchers found that putting red leg bands on birds increased dominant behavior as they took the lion's share of the food. For my psychology degree dissertation, I presented photos of men to be rated on a scale of friendly 0 to threatening 10. Men received a higher threat score if I photoshopped their t-shirt to be red. Mice were put on two sides of a wall with a door in. Only the right mouse could open the door. Slowly, they filled the left mouse's room with water, and eventually when the right mouse saw them in danger, they opened the door. However, mice that had previously been on the left side and were now on the right, mice who had previously been wetted, opened the door considerably faster because they knew how unpleasant it was to be in the other scenario. Basically, mice have empathy. That's nice to know, but now I want an experiment where there are stakes, risks. I want there to be a moral dilemma in this situation for the mouse. What do you do, Mr. Mouse? Save the stranger with the cure for the entire mouse colony, or save your family? I just recently heard of blind-sightedness during one of my cognitive psychology classes. Basically, the area of the brain that processes what our eyes see is located at the back of the head, just where your skull starts to get smaller, towards your neck. Because of this, if you hit your head back there quite often, everything will go black for a moment before sight returns again. Sometimes, though, following severe trauma to this area of the brain, like after falling off a ladder onto a curb or something, a person is never able to see again. For a long time, it was assumed that the eyes were somehow incapable of seeing following the trauma, and that was why people were blind. However, it's been shown that it is just the processing of the images that is damaged. In other words, your eyes are still working away, viewing images, but your brain is unable to process the images, so you can't see them. Some experiments looking into this have found that people with damage to this area can still navigate around things in front of them without realizing they are doing it. So if you told someone with this damage to walk down a corridor and you placed obstacles in their way, they wouldn't be able to see the obstacles, but they could have a void bumping into them because their eyes are still able to view them and send signals to other areas of the brain to avoid knocking things. This is known as blind-sightedness. Blew my mind a little. And with that, you have ruined Daredevil forever. He's not really blind, he's just got blind-sightedness. To like the nth degree, I suppose. One time I participated in a paid research experiment. I was basically tricked into thinking I was drunk. I was placed in a room with two other people, and we were instructed to drink vodka with cranberry juice over a period of time while we socialized. After we drank, I was placed in a room where I had to read some flashing words on a computer. I felt pretty drunk at this point. When the researcher came back into the room, he gave me my car keys and said I was never actually given alcohol. He briefly told me that because I was anticipating drinking for this experiment, that my brain had tricked me into feeling the effects of being intoxicated. I immediately snapped out of it and was completely amazed at how I felt. Solomon Ash's experiment on conformity. He set up a test wherein he would show 3 lines of different lengths to 5 or 6 individuals. I forgot the exact number, who had to state which line was the longest of the 3. The thing is, only the last individual is the participant and the others are actors paid to answer in a specific manner. For the first few questions, they chose the correct answer, but later on they start choosing the wrong one. The participant participants are conflicted as to whether they will say the correct answer or conform to the wrong answer as to not be judged by others or due to self-doubt of their own answers. In the end, most do conform. It's really interesting since it shows how powerful conformity is in the face of doubt, up to a point that some even question their own sanity during the test. Another variation of the experiment also had interesting results. It had the same setup with 5 individuals, with the last person being the participant. However, this time, some of the actors say the wrong answer while one actor says the correct one. There was an increase in participants who would choose the correct answer and avoid conformity. It shows how much doubt one can have on oneself when alone, but be brought back to self-confidence when they find outside support. Here's a twofer for you. So way back in the day, researchers examined the brains of cab drivers in London versus regular people via brain scanning, MRI I believe, but I can't recall. They found that the cab drivers had cognitive advantages over regular people and also had a larger hippocampus, the area of the brain primarily involved in memory storage and recall. And just the other year, researchers investigated the effects of video games on cognitive decline. They had older people either play Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy, took virtual piano lessons, or they did nothing. This lasted 6 months. The researchers measured brain size before and after the experiment began. They also gave the participants a test on their short-term memory and cognitive functioning before and after the experiment as well. Mario group increased gray matter in the hippocampus and cerebellum, improved short-term memory and cognitive functioning. Piano group increased gray matter in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and cerebellum, no change in cognitive functioning. Control had no significant change. The authors believe that it was because the participants had to learn and navigate through a virtual world in order to beat the game that they wound up developing their short-term memory. The results were similar to those found in cab driver research. Mario doesn't provide players with an in-game map the way Call of Duty does, so they have to develop an internal cognitive map of the virtual world in order to get around it. Now, it's important to remember that the changes in cognitive functioning were very small to the extent that I would argue that they aren't actually meaningful, that the sample size in this experiment were very small, which would have skewed the results, and that it was very recent and still needs to be replicated. But the results to me are fascinating in that they suggest that certain video games may provide certain benefits to older people. I'd really like to see what happens if they had participants play the game for longer than 6 months, since realistically, gamers won't just play games for a 6-month period, they play for years. Man, Mario Galaxy is the bomb. I love that game so much. This is something I've been thinking about lately, actually. I hate the fact that some games nowadays don't have mini-maps. I mean, I used to be great with directions in video games, but I think over time I have gotten worse because of the constant use of mini-maps within video games. The Selective Laziness of Reasoning is an article I found and then partially replicated in my research methods class during my undergraduate. It's so great with a very interesting method and results that make you think about discussion and arguments a lot. Basically, the researchers presented participants with different syllogism, logic puzzles like all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, so Socrates is mortal, etc. And they asked them to provide their answers and also their reasoning for the answers. Later on, participants were asked to return and they presented some of their old answers, but the answers were reversed to be exactly what they had written down previously. But if their own argument from prior was presented as someone else's, they would disagree with it. Essentially, the lesson was we critically evaluate other people's arguments with much more focused lenses, and we afford ourselves less loopholes to jump through to validate and substantiate our own claims. Diet and behavior in children. Sugar and sweets don't make kids hyper. I love this one because it's so counterintuitive and every parent loves to tell you how their kid definitely does. Researchers took a bunch of parents and their kids and split them into 2 groups, those who get healthy fruit and those who get sugary sweets. The kids were separated from their parents for a moment and given the fruit or the sweets. A few minutes later, the parents were brought back in and either told the truth about what they'd been given or lied and told the opposite. The parents and kids were left by themselves with an assortment of toys and the parents were asked to rate their kids' behavior. What they found is that irrespective of what they were actually given to eat, parents who were told their kids had sugary sweets reported worse behavior than those who were told they had fruit. Again, irrespective of what they actually had. The interesting thing is that when you actually looked at the kids' behavior, they really were misbehaving, generally being more inclined to screech, throw toys around, or ignore instructions. Turns out it's actually the parents' behavior that determines how the kids act. The same study has also been done with sugary drinks versus water, same result. Another interesting experiment is the Loftus experiment of fake memories and the power of suggestion. It's basically about implanting memories of events that have never taken place, or alter the subject's detailed memory of that event. You can quite easily test this in real life. Find a busy picture of a village, preferably cartoon and vividly colored, allow a test subject to inspect the picture for 20 to 30 seconds, and let them know that you'll be asking questions. Turn the picture face down and ask 2 to 3 questions about the contents of the picture, preferably easy to answer questions. Was there an X in the picture, or did Y happen? Also mix in a fake question there. For instance, the picture may have had a skyline but no sun. If you ask the subject whether the sun was yellow or orange, chances are that they will create a memory of a sun being visible in the picture and tell you a color. The Loftus experiment has been used to disqualify young children from giving testimonials in judicial proceedings, and follow-up experiments have included implanting memories of fake balloon rides and parents losing the subject in a mall as a toddler. It's quite fascinating. The last 2 stories have done nothing but inform me of one thing and one thing alone: children cannot be trusted. The elevator groupthink study, very amusing and sad at the same time. The experiment involved several actors entering an elevator with an oblivious participant. They then begin to perform a series of odd behaviors, such as they all stood facing the rear of the elevator. Inevitably, everyone else who got on ended up also facing the rear so as to not stand out from the rest. The study demonstrates how easily people succumb to group pressure to behave in a certain way. I don't think these ones are that good in that these events are happening in a vacuum in a very specific place. So if I saw everyone looking the back end of an elevator, for example, I would assume that maybe it's one of those elevators with 2 doors and that everyone else has used it before, especially if it's an elevator that I've never used before. If it's one that I had used before, I'd probably be stood there being like, what the hell is everyone doing? Research into where morality comes from. They asked people taboo questions like, a brother and a sister are alone in a cabin in the woods one night. They are both over 18 and decide to make love once, as they think it will strengthen their relationship. The sister is on birth control and the brother wears a condom just to be safe. Is this act wrong? Or another question was, a woman is cleaning her house and has no rags, so she finds an old American flag, tears it up, and uses it to clean her house. Is this act wrong? They created stories like this to give an initial reaction of disgust. They would then ask the participant to explain their answers. Most people couldn't give a good answer, only saying it feels wrong. They then went further and the interviewer would try their best to change the participant's mind, saying things like, well, no one saw, no one got hurt, etc., but participants wouldn't change their original response. The conclusion was that people make intuitive, emotional, split-second decisions all the time, and the reasoning, logical portion of the brain tries its best to explain the decision, but cannot change the initial decision. See The Rightful Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Subjects were tested for introvert versus extrovert personality types. Prediction was that when placed in a sensory deprivation chamber, the introverts would be able to handle it easily while the extroverts would not. Exactly the reverse was found. Introverts became agitated quickly and performed all manner of self-stimulation. Extroverts quickly went to sleep. What the findings showed was that it's introverts who are the sensation seekers, needing stimulation from the outside world. Extroverts create their own internal sensation and project that out to the world. Oh man, I'm such an introvert. Base rats. You probably know that if you drop a cat upside down that they'll right themselves and land on their feet. Rats have this reflex too. Even baby rats have this reflex. However, slower, which is tested by dropping them upside down in a tank of water. The baby rats will flip themselves upright as they float down through the water before they are scooped out and dried off. It was assumed that all reflexes are innately coded for in their genes. A group of researchers from the developmental psychobiology field didn't believe in this idea of innate reflexes. They believed that reflexes are learned through non-obvious experience. The researchers took a newly pregnant rat and sent her into space. The rat gestated the babies in space and was brought back to Earth just before giving birth. The baby rats were born on Earth in the lab. When the baby space rats were tested for the righting reflex, they didn't show it. They just floated through the water like they didn't know which way was down, because the baby rats didn't have experience with gravity in utero. They didn't learn about gravity and didn't develop the innate reflex. Therefore, other reflexes may be just as experience-driven as this one. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.